Chapter 1. Valentina's heels clicked against the marble floor of her home, her prison really, as she returned early from a charity luncheon that had bored her to tears. The house felt different. Too quiet, yet somehow alive with something she couldn't name. She set her purse down on the kitchen counter. A half-empty wine bottle stood next to two glasses, lipstick on one. Coral, not her shade. Strange. James never drank during the day. Her wedding ring caught the light as she reached for the bottle. 10 years of marriage summed up in a platinum band that felt heavier by the day. The sound came then. A laugh, feminine, breathless, from upstairs. Valentina knew that laugh. She didn't rush, didn't stomp up the stairs or scream or throw things. What would be the point? The truth had been whispering to her for months. She just hadn't wanted to hear it. Her body moved on autopilot, each step measured as she climbed the grand staircase of their West Side mansion. The plush carpet muted her approach. The bedroom door wasn't even fully closed. One push, and there they were. Her husband and her sister, tangled in the sheets of the bed Valentina had picked out when they'd first married. James's back was to her, but she could see Melanie's face, eyes closed in pleasure. Valentina stood there for 5 seconds. 10. Neither noticed her. She backed away, silent as she'd come. In the walk-in closet, she grabbed a duffel bag, the old leather one she'd had since college, before she'd let James replace everything she owned with designer labels. She stuffed it with jeans, t-shirts, a worn leather jacket she hadn't worn in years. Just the basics. Nothing that reminded her of this life. Her hands didn't shake as she changed out of her designer dress into jeans and a simple black top. She pulled her dark hair into a ponytail, wiped off her makeup, and slipped her feet into the only pair of boots she still owned. The moans grew louder. They still hadn't noticed her. In her home office, she emptied the emergency cash from the safe, $5,000 she'd been squirreling away for years without really knowing why. Now she knew. Her fingers hovered over her phone, wondering if she should leave a note or a text. What would she even say? Enjoy my life. I'm done with it. Instead, she took out the SIM card, cracked it in half, and left the phone on her desk. Valentina walked out the front door, got into her car, the only thing she'd insisted on buying herself, a practical sedan that James hated, and drove away. She didn't look back at the house. Didn't cry. Didn't scream. Hours later, as city sprawl gave way to open highway, something inside her began to crack. Her knuckles went white on the steering wheel. Her jaw ached from clenching. The sunset painted the sky in violent reds and oranges as she drove east, away from the coast, away from the life she'd built on shifting sand. Where was she going? The question floated in her mind, but she already knew the answer. Riverdale. The nowhere town she'd escaped a decade ago. The place where she'd left behind everything raw and real about herself to become James Porter's perfect wife. The place where Duke still lived. Duke. Just thinking his name made her stomach clench. He'd be different now. Hell, she was different now. 10 years could change a person. And the way they'd ended things. A sign appeared in her headlights. Riverdale, 120 miles. Valentina's foot pressed harder on the gas pedal. The engine's growl matched the building's storm inside her. As night fell completely, she turned on the radio. An old rock song filled the car, one she and Duke used to blast on his motorcycle as they tore through back roads, her arms wrapped around his waist, her face pressed between his shoulder blades. The memory hit her like a physical blow. For the first time since walking in on her husband and sister, tears filled her eyes. Not for James. Not for the marriage that had died long before today. For the girl she used to be. The one who laughed too loud, who rode on the back of motorcycles with dirt under her nails and freedom in her veins. The girl who had loved a boy named Duke with everything she had, until fear made her run. That girl was gone. But as Valentina drove toward the only real home she'd ever known, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, pieces of her remained, buried beneath the ashes of the lie she'd been living. The Welcome to Riverdale sign appeared, faded, and tilting slightly to the left. Just like she remembered. She was back. And she had absolutely no idea what came next. Chapter 2. Riverdale hadn't changed much in 10 years. Same cracked sidewalks. Same faded storefronts. Same feeling of being trapped in amber while the rest of the world moved on. Valentina parked outside Mac's Bar and Grill, the neon sign buzzing and flickering just like it had when she was 18. The place looked seedier than she remembered, but beggars couldn't be choosers. And right now, she was definitely a beggar. The bar smelled of stale beer and fried food. A few early drinkers hunched over their glasses, not bothering to look up when she entered. Valentina approached the bar, where a heavy-set woman with faded blonde hair wiped down glasses. "Help you?" The woman looked up, recognition flickering in her eyes. "Well, I'll be damned. Valentine Porter. Or is it still Valentine Ross?" "It's Valentina now," she corrected, her married name sticking in her throat. "And it's Ross again. Hi, Patty." Patty whistled low. "Never thought I'd see you back in this dump. Heard you married some rich fella out west." "Things change." Valentina forced a smile. "I heard you rent rooms upstairs. I need one." Patty's eyebrows shot up. "Trouble in paradise, huh?" "Something like that." 20 minutes and $200 later, Valentina had a key to a tiny room above the bar. The space was barely big enough for a double bed and dresser. The bathroom down the hall had to be shared with 2 other tenants. She sat on the bed, the springs creaking under her weight. So this was rock bottom. At least it was clean. After a shower that never quite got hot enough, Valentina changed into fresh clothes and headed back downstairs. The bar had filled slightly, and she kept her head down, not wanting to be recognized again. "You need a job." Valentina looked up to find Patty watching her. "What? You're broke, ain't you?" "Why else would Valentina Porter be staying above my bar?" "Ross," she corrected again. "And yes, I could use work." Patty nodded toward the diner across the street. "Blue Plate's hiring waitresses. Pays shit, but the tips are decent if you can handle the grabby truckers." "Thanks." An hour later, Valentina walked out of the Blue Plate diner with a job starting tomorrow. The owner, Hank, had barely looked at her application before handing her an apron. Desperation had its advantages. By evening, Valentina had bought some essentials from the dollar store and settled into her room. She sat by the window, watching motorcycles pull up to Mac's below. The Riot Kings. Duke's Motorcycle Club. Her stomach nodded. Would she see him tonight? Was he even still in Riverdale? Maybe he'd left like she had. A familiar rumble made her heart stop. She'd know that engine anywhere. The custom Harley with the modified pipes that growled rather than roared. "Duke." She pressed back from the window, heart pounding as he pulled up. He climbed off his bike with that same fluid grace, removed his helmet, and ran a hand through his dark hair. He was broader now, harder looking. The boy she'd known had become fully a man, intimidating in his leather cut with a Riot Kings emblem on the back. A vice president patch stood out on his chest. Second in command. As if sensing her eyes on him, Duke looked up toward her window. Valentina ducked back, breath caught in her throat. Too late. She'd seen the recognition flash across his face. Sleep didn't come easily that night. Every time the bar door slammed downstairs, Valentina tensed, wondering if heavy footsteps would climb toward her room. But Duke never came. Morning brought clouds and drizzling rain. She dressed in jeans and a t-shirt, tying her hair back with a band. The uniform at the Blue Plate was casual, thank God. The diner hummed with breakfast crowd chatter. Hank showed her the ropes quickly, then threw her to the wolves. By noon, Valentina's feet ached and coffee stains dotted her apron. "Table 6 needs a refill," called Sandy, an older waitress with kind eyes and a cigarette-roughened voice. Valentina grabbed the coffee pot and turned, then froze. Duke sat alone in booth 6, a half-empty mug in front of him. His dark eyes locked on hers, expression unreadable. For one wild moment, she considered running out the back door. But where would she go? This town was too small to hide in. So she walked over, coffee pot steady despite her trembling insides. "Refill." Her voice came out huskier than intended. Duke didn't respond immediately. His eyes traced her face, her body, noting all the changes 10 years had wrought. The scar on her forearm from a cooking accident, the tiny lines around her eyes, the absence of softness. "You look like hell, Valentine." His voice was deeper than she remembered, rougher. "It's Valentina now," she said automatically. "And thanks for the compliment." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "What are you doing back here?" She poured coffee into his mug without answering. "Your fancy husband know you're slinging coffee in this shithole?" The question hit like a slap. "No," she said finally. "And I'd like to keep it that way." Duke leaned back, assessing her with those penetrating eyes. "Trouble in paradise?" "Why does everyone keep asking me that?" "Because Valentina Ross wouldn't be caught dead back in Riverdale unless something went very wrong with her perfect life." His tone wasn't mocking, just matter of fact. Before she could respond, the bell above the door jangled. 3 men in Riot King's cuts walked in, stopping short when they spotted Duke with her. "Well, look what the cat dragged back," said the tallest one. Axel, she remembered. His beard was fuller now, streaked with gray. "Valentine Ross," said another, Denny, his smile not reaching his eyes. "Heard you were a porter these days." "It's Valentina," she said tightly. "Can I get you guys anything?" "Just coffee," Duke answered for all of them, his eyes never leaving her face. "We won't be staying long." The men slid into the booth, their presence filling the small space. Valentina felt dizzy suddenly, memories flooding back. These men had been like brothers once. Now, they were strangers. She brought their coffees, feeling Duke's eyes burning into her back as she walked away. The weight of his gaze stirred something she'd thought long dead. When they finally left, Duke paused at the counter where she was refilling salt shakers. "Whatever you're running from," he said quietly, "it followed you here." Her head snapped up. "What?" His eyes darkened. "This isn't over, Valentine." "It's Valentina," she whispered. Duke's mouth curved in a cold smile. "Not to me. Never to me." He walked out, leaving her heart racing against her ribs like it was trying to break free, just like it had 10 years ago, every time he looked at her that way. Home wasn't safe after all. It never had been. Not with Duke in it. Chapter 3. 3 days into her new life, and Duke was everywhere. When he wasn't physically present, taking his coffee at the same booth each morning, eyes tracking her movements, he was haunting the town itself. The garage he owned on 5th Street. The roadhouse where the Riot Kings gathered on weekends. The memories embedded in every corner of Riverdale. Valentina wiped down tables after the lunch rush, her muscles aching from the unaccustomed work. Her soft hands had quickly roughened, nails broken and cuticles raw. The bell jangled, and she looked up, tensing at the sight of Duke. "Alone this time." "We're closed," she lied, though they weren't for another hour. Duke ignored her, sliding into his usual booth. "Coffee." Valentina didn't move. "I'm not serving you." "Yes, you are." His dark eyes held hers. "Because you need this job, and Hank wouldn't like you turning away paying customers." She hated that he was right. Hated even more how her body reacted to his voice, deep and commanding, sending unwanted heat through her veins. She poured his coffee with more force than necessary, sloshing some onto the table. "Careful, Valentine," he said, his mouth curving. "Your perfect manners are slipping." "Stop calling me that."
"Why?"
"It's your name." "Not anymore." Duke leaned back, studying her.
"Right."
"You became someone else when you left." Valentina Porter, the society wife. She stiffened. "You don't know anything about me." "I know enough." He took a slow sip of coffee. "I know you ran when things got hard. I know you traded your soul for a platinum card and a mansion." "And what did you trade yours for?" she shot back, gesturing to his cut. "That leather jacket and a reputation that makes people cross the street when they see you coming?" Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. "At least I stayed true to who I am." "And who's that, Duke?" "The town bad boy. The rebel without a cause? How's that working out for you?" His hand snapped out, fingers circling her wrist in a grip just shy of painful. "Don't push me, Valentine. Not when you're the one who left without a goddamn word." The touch sent electricity through her arm. She pulled away as if burned. You didn't fight for me. He laughed, a harsh sound with no humor. Is that what you tell yourself to sleep at night? Before she could answer, Sandy called from the kitchen. Val, order up. Valentina backed away, grateful for the interruption. She spent the rest of her shift avoiding Duke's eyes, though she felt them on her constantly. When he finally left, he dropped a 20 on the table for a $3 coffee. I don't want your money, she said, trying to hand it back. Duke pushed her hand away, his fingers brushing hers. It's a tip, Valentine. For services rendered. The double meaning hung between them, heavy with memories of other services, other times. Her cheeks heated despite herself. Go to hell, Duke. His smile was slow, knowing. Already there, sweetheart. Have been since you left. After her shift, Valentina walked back to Max in the fading light. Her room felt smaller each day, the walls closing in. But it was better than the alternative, going home to a husband who never really saw her, and a sister who saw too much. She showered and changed, then lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling. 10 years fell away in an instant, and suddenly she was 18 again, lying in Duke's arms the night before she left Riverdale forever. The old water tower loomed against the starlit sky. Beneath it, sprawled on a blanket, Valentina curled against Duke's bare chest, their bodies cooling in the summer night. His heartbeat thundered under her ear, strong and steady like everything about him. I got accepted, she whispered. To Berkeley. Duke's body tensed beneath hers. California? It's a full scholarship. She traced patterns on his skin, not meeting his eyes. I have to go. His hand stilled in her hair. When were you going to tell me? I'm telling you now. Duke sat up, forcing her to do the same. His eyes, usually warm when they looked at her, had gone cold. When do you leave? Tomorrow. The word hung between them, a grenade with the pin pulled. Tomorrow, he repeated. And you're just telling me now. I didn't know how. Bullshit. Duke stood, pulling on his jeans with angry movements. You've known for weeks. You just didn't have the guts to tell me. Tears filled her eyes. I was scared. Of what? Of me? His voice rose. Have I ever given you reason to be afraid of me, Valentine? No. I was scared of asking you to come with me. Scared you'd say no. Scared you'd say yes, and then resent me for taking you away from everything you know. Duke laughed bitterly. So, you made the decision for both of us. Nice. Duke, please. Please what? Please understand why you're running away? Please forgive you for lying to me for weeks. She stood too, clutching the blanket around her naked body. I'm not running away. I'm running toward something. A future. A life beyond this town. A life without me in it. His voice dropped, the anger giving way to something worse. Defeat. It doesn't have to be. She reached for him, but he stepped back. You could come. Or we could try long distance. Or nothing. Duke's jaw tightened. You've made your choice, Valentine. You choose a life where you don't have to be ashamed of your boyfriend. Where you can forget you ever slummed it with a guy like me. That's not fair. Life isn't fair. He pulled on his shirt, then grabbed his jacket. Have a nice life in California, Valentine. I hope it's everything you dreamed of. He walked away, leaving her clutching the blanket, tears streaming down her face. Duke, she called after him. Please. I love you. He paused, half turning. For one breathless moment, she thought he'd come back. But then he kept walking, disappearing into the darkness without looking back. The next morning, she left for California. No goodbyes. No closure. Just a hole in her heart that she spent the next decade trying to fill with all the wrong things. A knock jolted Valentina from the memory. She sat up, disoriented, surprised to find her cheeks wet. She wiped them quickly, crossing to the door. Who is it? Me. Duke's voice, rough through the thin wood. Her heart stumbled. What do you want? Open the door, Valentine. Against her better judgment, she did. Duke filled the doorway, his broad shoulders blocking the hall light. He looked at her tear-stained face, and something in his expression shifted. You remembered. It wasn't a question. Remembered what? The night you left. Valentina crossed her arms. What do you want, Duke? He stepped forward, forcing her to back up or be touched by him. She chose to back up. I want to know why you're really here. His eyes searched hers. And don't give me some bullshit about visiting family. Your parents moved away years ago. I needed a change. Try again. She sighed, suddenly exhausted. What does it matter to you? We're strangers now. Are we? Duke moved closer, invading her space. Because your body still responds to mine exactly the same way it did 10 years ago. Heat bloomed in her chest, spreading outward. That's just muscle memory. Is it? His hand rose, hovering near her cheek without touching. Is that why you're trembling right now? I'm not. But she was, and they both knew it. Duke's hand dropped. When you're ready to tell me the truth about why you're back, you know where to find me. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. And Valentine? Don't make me wait another 10 years. The door closed behind him, leaving her alone with memories that burned hotter than ever. Chapter 4. You look like you haven't slept in days, Sandy said, sliding onto the stool beside Valentina during their break. That room at Max keeping you up? Something like that. Valentina sipped her coffee, willing the caffeine to kick in. Truth was, Duke's visit 3 nights ago had left her restless, memories surfacing like bodies in a lake. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face, then and now. The boy who'd loved her. The man who looked at her like she was both salvation and damnation. You should find a better place, Sandy suggested. Max is fine for passing through, but not for staying. I'm working on it. Another lie. Valentina had no plans beyond surviving each day. The future was a luxury she couldn't afford to think about. The door chimed, and Hank's booming voice cut through their conversation. Ladies, break's over. We got customers. Valentina looked up to see Duke entering with Axel and 2 other Riot Kings she didn't recognize. As usual, heads turned. The club had that effect, a mix of fear and fascination that parted crowds. I'll take them, Sandy offered, seeing Valentina's expression. No, it's fine. She stood, straightening her apron. I need to face him sometime. Sandy squeezed her arm. Just holler if you need backup. Duke's crew took their usual booth. Valentina approached with her pad, not making eye contact. What can I get you? For coffees, Axel said. And whatever pie you got today. She nodded, turning to leave, but Duke's voice stopped her. Actually, I'll take a full breakfast. Eggs over easy, bacon crisp, toast barely browned. He paused. Just how I like it. The familiar order, his standard from years ago, made her stomach clench. Anything else? Yeah. His eyes locked on hers. An explanation. Valentina felt the other men watching. Kitchens backed up. Food might take a while. She walked away, feeling Duke's eyes on her back like a physical touch. When she returned with their coffees, the men were deep in conversation that stopped abruptly. Cherry or apple? She asked, nodding toward the pies in the display case. Cherry, Axel said. And make it quick. We got business. Valentina served them, keeping her interactions minimal. As they finished, dark clouds gathered outside, the sky turning an ominous gray-green. Storm's coming, Hank called from the register. Closing early. Radio says it's going to be a bad one. Customers began leaving as rain pelted the windows. Valentina started cleaning up, hoping to finish before the worst hit. Duke's crew departed, but she noticed Duke himself lingering at the counter, watching the storm intensify. Don't you have somewhere to be? She asked, wiping down the surface between them. My garage is 2 blocks away. I'll wait out. Hank approached, keys jangling. Val, can you lock up? I gotta get home to my wife. She hates being alone in storms. Before she could answer, he'd thrust the keys into her hand and headed for the door. Just double-check the storage room inventory before you go. List is on the clipboard. The door slammed behind him, leaving her alone with Duke and the howling wind outside. Looks like it's just us, he said, a dangerous edge to his voice. I have work to do. She moved toward the back, hoping he'd leave. Instead, He followed her into the narrow hallway leading to the storage room. "We need to talk, Valentine." "There's nothing to talk about." She pushed open the storage room door, flicking on the light. "What happened between us was a lifetime ago." "Then why are you back?" She sighed, turning to face him. "Because I had nowhere else to go." "Happy?" His expression darkened. "What happened to your perfect husband and your perfect life?" "It wasn't perfect." The words came out before she could stop them. "Nothing ever is." Duke stepped closer, filling the doorway. "Did he hurt you?"
No.
Technically true. Physical pain would have been easier than what James had done. Then what? Why do you care? She turned away, running her finger down the inventory list, pretending to count boxes. "Because you show up after 10 years, looking like a ghost of yourself, and expect me to just ignore it?" His voice rose. "You ran when things got real once before. I want to know what you're running from now." The accusation hit like a slap. "I ran? That's rich, coming from you." "What the hell does that mean?" "It means you let me go." The words burst from her. "You walked away that night at the water tower. You didn't fight for me, Duke. Not once." A crash of thunder shook the building. The lights flickered once, twice, then plunged them into darkness. Damn it. Valentina fumbled in her pocket for her phone, only to remember she'd left it at the counter. A moment later, Duke's phone flashlight illuminated the small space. His face, half in shadow, looked carved from stone. "You think I didn't fight for you?" His voice was dangerously quiet. "I came to your house the next morning. Your mother said you'd already left for the airport. I drove there, broke every speed limit. Your flight had already boarded." Valentina stared at him. "I never knew that." "Because you didn't want to." He moved closer, backing her against the metal shelves. "I called you for weeks. Your number changed. I wrote letters. They came back unopened. My mother was following your instructions," he finished. "Don't lie to me, Valentine. Not now. Not after everything." Rain pounded the roof, a distant rumble of thunder punctuating his words. The flashlight cast strange shadows on the walls, making the small room feel even smaller. "I was scared," she whispered. "Of what?" "Of loving you too much. Of giving up my dreams for you. Of staying in this town forever." His laugh was bitter. "So instead you married a man you didn't love and lived a life that made you miserable. Great choice." "I thought I loved him." She wrapped her arms around herself. "I was wrong." Duke's free hand slammed into the shelf beside her head, making her jump.
"And what about me?"
"Did you love me? Or was I just your small-town rebellion? That's not fair. Life isn't fair." He threw her own words back at her.
"You taught me that."
They stood in tense silence, the storm raging outside mirroring the one between them. The storage room door suddenly slammed shut with a gust of wind. Duke tried the handle. Locked.
"What?"
"It can't be." Valentina pushed him aside, rattling the door uselessly. "Hank said these doors automatically lock from the outside. Fire code violation, but he never fixed it." Duke leaned against the shelves. "Looks like we're stuck until someone comes." "Great." Valentina slid down to sit on the floor, as far from Duke as the small room allowed. "Just great." They sat in silence, the only light from Duke's phone gradually dimming to conserve battery. "You still haven't told me why you came back," he said finally. Valentina closed her eyes. What was the point in hiding anymore? "I caught my husband in bed with my sister." The silence that followed was heavy. When Duke spoke, his voice had lost its edge. "Jesus, Valentine."
"Yeah."
She laughed hollowly. "Turns out perfect lives aren't so perfect after all." "What did you do?" "Nothing. I just left, packed a bag, and drove away." She wrapped her arms tighter around herself. "Pathetic, right? I didn't even confront them." Duke was quiet for a long moment.
"No."
"Not pathetic. Smart. You got out." "I ran. Again." She looked up at him in the dimness. "That's what I do, remember? When things get real, I run." He moved then, sliding down to sit beside her, their shoulders not quite touching. "We all run from something, Valentine. The trick is knowing when to stop. The closeness of him, his warmth, his scent, the solid presence of his body, made her heart race. After weeks of feeling nothing but numb emptiness, the rush of sensation was overwhelming. "I don't know if I can," she whispered. "Can what?" "Stop running." She turned to look at him, finding his face inches from hers. "I don't know who I am anymore, Duke. I spent 10 years becoming someone else, and now that person is gone." His eyes, dark in the dim light, searched hers. "You're still in there, Valentine. The girl who rode on the back of my bike with her arms around my waist. The girl who wasn't afraid of anything." She was afraid of one thing. Valentina's voice caught. "Loving you too much." Duke's breath hitched. His hand rose, hovering near her cheek as it had in her room days ago, not quite touching, but close enough that she could feel the heat of his skin. "And now," he asked, his voice rough, "now I'm afraid of everything." The confession tore from her throat. Of feeling. Of not feeling. Of being alone. Of being with someone. His fingers finally made contact, brushing a strand of hair from her face. The touch sent electricity down her spine. "I'm not him," Duke said quietly. "I would never betray you like that." "No," she agreed. "You just let me walk away again." His hand stilled. "Is that what you think?" "It's what I know." She pulled back slightly. "We're different people now, Duke. Too much has happened. Too much time has passed. And yet here we are." His gaze dropped to her lips. Still fighting the same battle. The air between them thickened, charged with a decade of unresolved feelings. Valentina felt herself leaning in, drawn by a gravity she couldn't fight. Duke's phone chose that moment to die, plunging them into complete darkness. "Shit," he muttered, and she felt him shift away. The darkness was oddly freeing. Without sight, other senses heightened. The sound of rain on the roof, the scent of his leather jacket, the warmth of his body beside hers. "Duke," she whispered. "Yeah,
I'm sorry.
for leaving the way I did." His sigh was barely audible. "I'm sorry, too. For letting you go." In the pitch black, his hand found hers. Rough, calloused fingers interlaced with hers, so different from James's smooth, manicured hands. Duke's touch felt like coming home and jumping off a cliff all at once. They sat like that, hand in hand in the darkness, neither speaking, as the storm raged on. Chapter 5. Morning light filtered through the small storage room window, painting stripes across Valentina's face. She blinked awake, disoriented. Something warm and solid supported her head, Duke's shoulder. Somehow during the night, they'd shifted closer, her body curled against his side, his arm around her. For one suspended moment, she allowed herself to feel the rightness of it. Then reality crashed back. She pulled away abruptly, standing to stretch her stiff muscles. "Morning." Duke's voice was sleep-roughened, his hair mussed. "Someone should be here soon to open up," she said, avoiding his eyes. He stood, towering over her in the small space. "Valentine." "Don't." She stepped back. "Last night we were trapped. Emotions were high. Let's not make it into something it wasn't."
His jaw tightened.
"And what was it?" "A mistake." The word tasted like ash. "We can't go backward, Duke." Before he could respond, the storage room door swung open. Hank stood there, keys jingling. "What the hell? You two spend the night in here?" "Door locked behind us during the storm," Duke explained, his eyes never leaving Valentina's face. "Battery died on my phone before we could call." Hank glanced between them, suspicion clear in his weathered face.
Uh-huh.
"Well, the diner opens in an hour, Val. Better get yourself together." He walked away, leaving them alone again. Duke took a step toward her. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is." She moved past him, careful not to touch. "It has to be." She felt his eyes on her back as she walked away, but he didn't follow. By mid-afternoon, the diner hummed with post-storm activity. The crews repairing down power lines needed coffee. Families whose homes had lost electricity came for hot meals. Through it all, Valentina moved mechanically, her mind stuck on the feeling of Duke's arm around her, his hand in hers. "Order up for table 9, Sandy called, sliding a plate across the counter. Valentina delivered it to a family with 2 small children, mustering a smile as the little girl thanked her. Children. Something she and James had discussed but never pursued. Something she'd once imagined having with Duke in another lifetime. The bell above the door jingled, and her heart stuttered as Duke walked in. Alone this time, without his crew. His eyes found hers immediately, as if drawn by a magnet. Instead of his usual booth, he took a seat at the counter, directly in her section. "Coffee," he said when she approached. She poured it silently, her hand steady despite the storm inside her. "We need to talk," Duke said, voice low. "Nothing to talk about. The hell there isn't." His fingers circled her wrist, gentle but firm. Last night was 2 people with history stuck in a room together. She cut him off. "Nothing more." Duke's eyes darkened. "You're still running, Valentine. And you're still trying to drag me back into the past." She pulled her wrist free. "Some things don't change. Some things do." He leaned closer. "I've changed. Have you?" The question hit deeper than he could know. Had she changed? Or had she just been playing a role for 10 years, pretending to be Valentina Porter, sophisticated wife and socialite, when she'd been Valentine Ross underneath the whole time? "Yes," she whispered, "but not in the ways that matter." Duke watched her, something unreadable in his expression. "Come with me tonight. Just to talk." "I can't. Can't or won't. Both." She moved away to serve another customer, needing distance from his intensity. For the next hour, Duke nursed his coffee, watching her. Every time she glanced his way, his eyes were there, waiting. It made her skin hum, made her breathless, made her angry. How dare he still affect her this way? When her shift ended, she hurried to the back room to change, hoping Duke would give up and leave. No such luck. He was waiting outside the rear exit when she emerged. "Are you stalking me now?" she demanded, wrapping her jacket tighter against the evening chill. "If that's what it takes to get you to listen." He fell into step beside her as she headed toward Max. 10 minutes, Valentine. That's all I'm asking." "Fine." She stopped, turning to face him. 10 minutes. Talk. Duke glanced around the busy street. "Not here." "Where, then?" He nodded toward his motorcycle parked nearby. "The old water tower. For old time's sake." The suggestion sent a flood of memories through her, star-watching, whispered promises, his hands on her skin.
"No."
She started walking again. Neutral ground or nothing.
"Fine."
"The park. 5 minutes from here." Valentina hesitated, then nodded. 5 minutes. "Then I'm going home." The walk to the small-town park was tense with unspoken words. Duke kept pace beside her, his presence both familiar and alien. The man walking with her wasn't the boy she'd loved. He was harder, more guarded. But glimpses of that boy showed through in the way he shoved his hands in his pockets when nervous, the way his jaw worked when he was holding back words. The park was empty, the playground equipment still wet from the storm. They sat on a bench facing the empty baseball field, a careful distance between them. "Your 10 minutes started when we sat down," Valentina said, staring straight ahead. Duke took a deep breath. "I need to know if you're staying." The question surprised her. "I don't know. Because if this is just another pit stop for you, a place to hide until you figure out your next escape, tell me now." She turned to look at him. "Why does it matter to you?" "Because I can't do this again." His voice roughened. "I can't watch you walk away a second time." "Do what again?" "There is no this, Duke. We're not 20 anymore." "No, we're not." He met her gaze. "We're adults who've been through hell and somehow ended up back where we started. Tell me that doesn't mean something." "It means life has a sick sense of humor." She shook her head. "Look at us, Duke. You're VP of an MC, for God's sake. I'm a soon-to-be divorced socialite who doesn't even know who she is anymore. What could possibly come of this except more pain?" Duke's hand brushed hers on the bench between them. "Maybe something real." The touch sent electricity up her arm. She pulled back as if burned. "Real." She laughed bitterly. I thought my marriage was real. I thought the life I built was real. I don't trust my judgment anymore. Trust this then. Duke moved closer, his thigh pressing against hers. Whatever was between us, good or bad, right or wrong, it was always real. His nearness made her dizzy, made her yearn for things she'd spent years convincing herself she didn't want. His eyes dropped to her lips, and she knew what would happen next. Duke leaned in, one hand coming up to cup her cheek. Valentina's breath caught, her body swaying toward his as if pulled by invisible strings. His lips hovered a breath away from hers, close enough that she could feel their warmth. Time suspended. Every cell in her body screamed for completion, for the kiss that would shatter her carefully constructed walls. But then Duke pulled back, his expression shuddering. "You don't get to crawl back just because you're lonely," he said, voice rough with restraint. The words hit like a physical blow. Anger flashed through her, hot and cleansing. Before she could think, her hand connected with his cheek in a sharp slap that echoed in the empty park. "Screw you, Duke." She stood, trembling with rage. "I didn't come back for you. The world doesn't revolve around you and what you want." She stalked away, furious tears blurring her vision. Behind her, she heard Duke call her name, but she didn't turn around. She kept walking, pace quickening to a near run by the time she reached Max. The bar was crowded, Friday night in full swing. Valentina pushed through the throng, ignoring catcalls and propositions as she headed for the stairs to her room. Her hands shook so badly she could barely get the key in the lock. When the door finally swung open, she froze in the doorway. Her room had been ransacked. Clothes strewn about, drawers emptied, the cheap dresser overturned. The little she owned lay in ruins. But what stopped her breath completely was what had been nailed to her door: a platinum wedding band. Her wedding ring, the one she'd left on the bathroom counter when she walked out on James. Someone had found her. Someone knew where she was. Fear washed through her, cold and paralyzing. She backed out of the room, bumping into a solid chest. "Whoa, where's the fire?" Patty stood there, holding a stack of clean towels. Her eyes widened as she glanced past Valentina into the trashed room. What the hell happened? Valentina couldn't speak, could barely breathe. She pointed mutely at the ring nailed to her door. "Jesus Christ," Patty muttered. "We need to call the sheriff."
No.
The word came out strangled. "No police." "Someone broke in, honey. That's a crime." "Please, Patty. No police." Valentina felt panic rising, choking her. "I can't. I need to leave. Tonight." Patty studied her face, then nodded slowly. "You're in trouble, aren't you? Real trouble." Valentina's silence was answer enough. "All right," Patty said after a moment. "No cops. But you can't stay here, not after this." She hesitated. "I know someone who might help. Someone who can keep you safe." Valentina knew who she meant before she said the name. "Duke Reynolds." Patty nodded.
He's got a place outside town.
"Off the grid. Nobody would look for you there." The thought of running to Duke after what had just happened made Valentina's stomach churn. But the alternative, waiting for whoever had found her to return, was worse. "Call him," she whispered, defeat tasting like ashes on her tongue. "Please." Patty squeezed her shoulder. "Pack what you can salvage. I'll make the call." Alone in the wreckage of her room, Valentina stared at the wedding ring nailed to her door. A message clear as day: "You're still mine." James had found her. And this time, running wouldn't be enough. Chapter 6. Valentina paced the length of Patty's small apartment, checking her phone every few minutes. She'd been staying there since the break-in 2 nights ago, sleeping on a lumpy pull-out couch that smelled like cigarettes and cheap perfume. "Would you sit down?" Patty sighed from the kitchenette. "You're making me dizzy." He should have called by now. Valentina bit her thumbnail, a habit she'd abandoned years ago. What if he doesn't find anything? Duke knows what he's doing. Patty set a mug of coffee in front of her. "If there's anything to find out about who trashed your room, he'll find it." Valentina wrapped her hands around the warm mug, trying to stop their trembling. Since finding her wedding ring nailed to her door, She'd barely slept, jumping at every sound. A sharp knock made her flinch. Patty checked the peephole, then opened the door to Duke. His face was grim, jaw set in a hard line. The sight of him, broad shoulders filling the doorframe, dark eyes scanning the room before landing on her, sent a conflicting rush of relief and anxiety through Valentina's body. "Well?"
Patty asked.
Duke stepped inside, closing the door behind him. No sign of forced entry. Whoever did it either had a key or knew how to pick a lock. "What about security cameras?" Valentina asked. "Mac's cameras have been broken for months." Duke's gaze was assessing, taking in her pale face, the shadows under her eyes. "You look like hell." "Thanks." Patty cleared her throat. "I'll give you 2 minutes." She disappeared into her bedroom, closing the door with a pointed click. Valentina stood, crossing her arms protectively over her chest. "Did you find anything else?" "Maybe." Duke leaned against the wall, keeping his distance. "Desk clerk at the motel on Route 16 says a man matching your husband's description checked in 3 days ago. Paid cash. Keeps to himself." Her heart sank. "It's him." "You sure?" "I can find out. I'm sure." She sank back onto the couch. The ring was a message. "He knows I'm here." Duke watched her, his expression unreadable. "What do you want to do?"
"Run."
"Again?" She laughed bitterly. "It's what I'm good at, right?" "Valentine." "Don't." She held up a hand. "I can't do this with you right now. Not with everything else happening." His jaw tightened.
"Fine."
"We won't talk about us. But we need to talk about keeping you safe. I'll figure something out. Like hell you will." Duke pushed off from the wall, taking a step toward her. "This isn't a game. If your husband found you once, he'll find you again." "I never said it was a game." "Then stop acting like you can handle this alone." They glared at each other, the tension crackling between them. Valentina looked away first. "Why do you even care?" she asked quietly. "After what I said to you at the park." "Because I'm not the one who holds grudges for 10 years, he cut in. "That's your specialty." The barb hit home. She flinched. Duke sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Look, Patty told me she offered my place as a safe house. The offer stands. I can't stay with you. It's not with me. It's my hunting cabin. I'm barely there." Valentina hesitated. "I don't know. It's off the grid. No address. No paper trail. He won't find you there." The logical part of her new Duke was right. She needed to disappear, at least until she figured out what James wanted. But the thought of being indebted to Duke, of taking his help after everything between them. "I need to think about it," she said finally. Duke nodded, his face carefully neutral. "Think fast. If it is your husband at that motel, you don't have much time." As if to punctuate his words, Valentina's phone buzzed with an incoming text. Her blood froze when she saw the number, not one she had saved, but one she recognized all the same.
"James."
"I know where you are, Val. We need to talk. Duke must have seen the change in her expression. "What is it?" Wordlessly, she handed him the phone. His face darkened as he read the message. "That settles it," he said, pocketing her phone. "You're coming with me. Give me my phone back."
"No."
He could track it. "Duke." "This isn't a discussion, Valentine." His voice was steel. "Pack your stuff. We're leaving now." She stood, anger flaring. "You don't get to order me around like one of your club members. And you don't get to risk your safety because you're too stubborn to accept help." He stepped closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "You came to me, remember? You asked Patty to call me. That was before." "Before what? Before you remembered you hate me?" His laugh was harsh. "Get over it. This isn't about us. It's about keeping you safe." The worst part was that he was right. Pride wouldn't protect her from James, not if he was determined to find her.
"Fine," she relented.
"But I'm not staying at your cabin." "Then where?" "There's a trailer for rent out by Miller's Creek. I saw it in the classifieds." Duke's eyebrows shot up. "That rusted-out tin can? It's barely standing. It's private. And cheap." She grabbed her bag, stuffing clothes inside. I have some money saved. It'll be enough for a deposit. It's not safe. Neither is anywhere else, apparently. She zipped the bag closed with more force than necessary. At least there, I'll have my independence. Duke studied her, something shifting in his expression. This is really important to you, isn't it? Not needing anyone. The observation struck too close to home. Valentina looked away. I've spent 10 years being what other people needed me to be, she said quietly. I need to figure out who I am now on my own terms. After a long moment, Duke nodded.
All right.
The trailer it is. Surprise flickered through her. You're not going to argue? Would it make a difference if I did? She offered a small smile. Probably not. That's what I thought. He held out his hand. Keys. I'll drive. The trailer was worse than Valentina remembered. Rust ate at the corners, the steps sagged, and the screen door hung at an angle. Inside wasn't much better. Peeling linoleum, musty curtains, a kitchenette with more missing tiles than intact ones. Home sweet home, she murmured, setting her bag on the sagging couch. Duke leaned in the doorway, disapproval radiating from him. This place is a tetanus shot waiting to happen. It has running water and electricity. That's all I need. And locks that wouldn't keep out a determined child. He knelt by the door, examining the flimsy mechanism. I'll fix this at least. You don't have to. Yes, I do. He looked up at her, expression serious. I know you want your independence, Valentine. I respect that. But you're not safe until we figure out what your husband wants. The concern in his voice made her throat tight. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Duke straightened. I'll bring some tools tomorrow. And a better burner phone. He pulled hers from his pocket, powering it off before handing it back. Keep this off. Use it only if you absolutely have to. Their fingers brushed during the exchange, sending a jolt through her system. Duke pulled back quickly, as if feeling it too. I'll see about getting you a job at my garage, he said, voice rougher than before. Safer than the diner, where anyone could walk in. I don't know anything about cars. You'll learn. He moved toward the door. Get some rest. Lock this behind me, for what it's worth. Valentina watched him go, feeling oddly bereft as his motorcycle roared to life outside. Through the grimy window, she saw him pause, looking back at the trailer as if to memorize its location. Then he was gone, leaving her alone with her thoughts. The trailer creaked and groaned as night fell, every sound making her tense. But it was her space. The first she'd had that wasn't given to her by a man, that didn't come with strings attached. As she lay on the lumpy mattress, staring at the water-stained ceiling, Valentina tried to ignore the hollow feeling in her chest. She'd gotten what she wanted. Distance from Duke, independence from everyone. So, why did it feel like she was still running? Chapter 7. A week in the trailer, and Valentina had almost convinced herself she'd made the right choice. The locks were fixed. Duke had seen to that, along with patching the worst of the roof leaks. He'd found her a job in his garage's front office, answering phones and managing the schedule. The pay was better than the diner, and she didn't have to deal with grabby customers. She'd seen no sign of James. Maybe he'd given up. Maybe he'd never really been in town at all. And Duke. Duke kept his distance. Professional at the garage. Checking in with brief texts on the burner phone he'd given her. Nothing more. It should have been a relief. Instead, it left her restless, like an itch she couldn't scratch. You look like you're about to fall over, Axel commented as he dropped a stack of invoices on her desk. Of all Duke's crew, he was the most approachable, treating her with gruff kindness. Just tired. Valentina stifled a cough. The truth was, she'd been feeling off for days. Headache. Sore throat. The trailer's damp chill settling into her bones at night. Boss in his office. Axel nodded toward the closed door. Conference call with part suppliers. She shuffled papers, trying to look busy. He said not to disturb him. Axel studied her face. You should go home. You look like shit. Thanks for the compliment. Not a compliment. An observation. He shrugged. Duke wouldn't want you working sick. I'm fine. She forced a smile. Besides, I need the hours. Axel's retort was cut short by a coughing fit that left Valentina gasping for breath. When she finally caught it, she found both Axel and Duke, who must have emerged from his office, staring at her. "Go home," Duke said, his voice brooking no argument. "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're sick." He grabbed her coat from the rack. "Axel, finish those invoices." "Valentine, I'm driving you home. I have my car. And you can barely keep your eyes open." Duke held out her coat. "You can get your car tomorrow." Too exhausted to argue, she let him help her into her coat. The moment his hands brushed her shoulders, he stilled. "You're burning up." His palm pressed against her forehead. "Jesus, Valentine. How long have you been like this?" "It's just a cold." She pulled away from his touch, even as her body craved more of it. "I'll take some aspirin and be fine." Duke's jaw set in that stubborn line she remembered too well. "Get in my truck."
Now.
The drive to her trailer passed in a blur. Valentina leaned her fevered forehead against the cool window, fighting the urge to close her eyes. Duke was silent beside her, but she could feel his concern like a physical presence. When they arrived, he killed the engine but made no move to get out. "I can make it inside on my own," she said, reaching for the door handle. "I know you can." His voice was surprisingly gentle. "But you don't have to." The words hung between them, loaded with meaning beyond this moment. Valentina hesitated, then nodded once. Inside, the trailer was freezing. The ancient space heater struggled against the drafts seeping through every crack and seam. "This place is an icebox," Duke muttered, adjusting the heater. "No wonder you're sick. It's fine in the daytime." Valentina sank onto the couch, suddenly dizzy. The room tilted and swayed around her. Duke's face swam in her vision. "Valentine? Hey, stay with me." His hand on her cheek was blessedly cool. She leaned into it without thinking. "You're burning up." His concern cut through her fog. "Where's your aspirin?" "Bathroom cabinet." Her tongue felt thick. "I just need to sleep it off." Duke disappeared, returning moments later with pills and water. He helped her take them, his hand steady as he held the glass to her lips. "You should go," she whispered. "I'm fine." Instead, he sat beside her on the couch. "Not happening. You can barely sit upright. Don't need a babysitter." "No, you need a doctor." He frowned as she shook her head. "At least let me get you comfortable." Resistance took too much energy. Valentina let him help her to the bedroom, let him pull off her boots and tuck her under the thin blankets. The fever made everything distant, dreamlike. "Cold," she murmured, shivering despite the heat radiating from her skin. Duke added his jacket over her blankets. It smelled like him, leather and motor oil, and that indefinable scent that was uniquely Duke. She burrowed into it, finding comfort in the familiar. Through half-closed eyes, she watched him move around the small space, gathering supplies. A bowl of water, a washcloth, more aspirin. His efficiency spoke of experience. "Not your first time playing nurse," she observed, voice raspy. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "My mom got sick a lot before she died. I got good at taking care of her." Didn't know that. The admission made her sad. There was so much about him she'd never learned. "Lot of things you don't know about me, Valentine." He sat on the edge of the bed, laying the cool cloth on her forehead. "Rest now. We can talk when you're feeling better." The cloth felt heavenly against her burning skin. She sighed, letting her eyes close fully. Half waking sometime later, she found Duke sitting in the room's only chair, reading something on his phone. The light outside had changed, late afternoon, maybe. How long had she slept? "Hey," she croaked. He looked up, relief evident in his expression. "Hey yourself. How you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck." She struggled to sit up. Duke was there instantly, helping her.
"Easy.
You've been out for a few hours." He touched her forehead. "Still hot, but not as bad. Think you can eat something?" Her stomach growled in response. Duke's mouth curved in a smile that made her heart skip. "I'll take that as a yes. Sit tight." He returned with a steaming mug. The scent made her blink in surprise. "Is that Lemon tea with honey and a tiny splash of whiskey. He helped her take it. Your mom's recipe for colds, if I remember right. The familiar taste brought tears to her eyes. You remembered. Duke sat beside her again, closer this time. I remember a lot of things, Valentine. She sipped the tea, letting its warmth spread through her. Thank you for all this. He shrugged, uncomfortable with the gratitude. Don't mention it. No, I mean it. She met his eyes. You didn't have to do any of this, especially after how I've been acting. How you've been acting is beside the point. His voice roughened. You're sick. You needed help. Simple as that, huh? Sometimes, yeah. He took the empty mug from her hands. How about some soup? I had Axel bring some from Rosie's diner. Chicken and wild rice? She asked hopefully. Duke's smile deepened. Your favorite. Some things don't change. As he left to heat the soup, Valentina leaned back against the pillows, his words echoing in her mind. Some things don't change. Like the way he remembered how she took her tea. Like the way he still watched out for her, even when she pushed him away. Like the way her heart still recognized him, even after all these years. The soup was perfect, thick and hearty, just what her body needed. Duke watched her eat, satisfaction evident in his expression. Better? He asked when she'd finished. Much. She handed him the empty bowl. I can't believe you're still here. Where else would I be? Running your garage? Leading your club? Anywhere but playing nursemaid to your ex. His expression shuddered. The garage is fine. Axel's covering for me. As for the club, he shrugged. Some things are more important. The implication hung in the air between them. Valentina looked away first. You should go home, she said softly. I'm feeling better. Not a chance. Duke settled deeper into the chair. Fever could come back during the night. So, what? You're just going to sit there all night? That's the plan. He crossed his arms. Unless you'd rather I left. The question was loaded. They both knew it. I don't want you to leave, she admitted, the fever making her braver. But I hate owing people. Duke's expression softened. You don't owe me anything, Valentine. Never have. Then why are you here? Really? He was quiet for a long moment. Because I have a soft spot for stubborn women who don't know when to ask for help. The answer wasn't what she expected. It made her laugh, which turned into another coughing fit. Duke was beside her instantly, rubbing her back until it passed. Sorry, she gasped when she could breathe again. For coughing? Pretty sure that's not your fault. For being stubborn. For pushing you away. She met his eyes. For all of it. Duke's hand stilled on her back. Say that again when you're not delirious with fever. I'm not delirious. She reached for his hand, surprising them both. I'm just tired of fighting. His fingers laced with hers, warm and solid. Then stop fighting, Valentine. Just for tonight. It was permission to let go, to accept the comfort he offered without reading more into it. Valentina nodded, suddenly exhausted again. Duke helped her lie back down, adjusting the blankets around her. As he moved to return to the chair, she held onto his hand. Stay, she whispered. Please. A heartbeat passed.
2.
Then Duke eased onto the bed beside her, on top of the covers, maintaining a careful distance. Just until you fall asleep, he murmured. Valentina closed her eyes, the weight of his presence more comforting than she wanted to admit. As sleep claimed her, she felt his fingers gently stroke her hair. For the first time since returning to Riverdale, she slept without dreams, without fear, without the gnawing emptiness that had become her constant companion. She slept like she was home. Chapter 8. Morning light filtered through the thin curtains, painting stripes across the bed. Valentina blinked awake, disoriented. Her fever had broken sometime in the night, leaving her wrung out but clearer-headed. The space beside her was empty, but the imprint on the pillow told her Duke had stayed. The scent of coffee drifted from the kitchenette. She sat up slowly, testing her strength. Her body ached, but the bone-deep chill had subsided. Progress. Morning. Duke stood in the doorway, 2 mugs in hand. He'd changed clothes. Someone must have brought him fresh ones. His hair was damp, like he'd showered in her tiny bathroom. Morning. Her voice was still raspy. You stayed. He handed her a mug, cream, no sugar, just how she liked it. Another thing he remembered. Your fever spiked again around midnight. He leaned against the doorframe, watching her over the rim of his cup. Figured it was better to stick around. Thank you. She sipped the coffee, letting its warmth seep through her. For everything. Duke nodded, his expression unreadable. How are you feeling? Better. Still weak, but better. Good. He straightened. I've got to head to the garage. Axel's bringing your car by later. Was it her imagination, or was he suddenly in a hurry to leave? After spending the night watching over her, he couldn't get away fast enough. Duke, she called as he turned to go. Is everything okay? He paused, back to her. Fine. You seem different this morning. When he turned back, his face was carefully blank. Just busy. The garage doesn't run itself. But something had changed. She could feel it in the air between them, a new tension that hadn't been there when she'd fallen asleep with his hand in her hair. Did I say something? Last night, when I was feverish? Duke ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she recognized from years ago. He was uncomfortable. You talked in your sleep. He wouldn't meet her eyes. Old stuff. Nothing important. Valentina felt heat rise to her cheeks that had nothing to do with fever. What had she said? What memories had her subconscious dredged up? Duke. I need to go. He gathered his jacket. Stay in bed today. Rest. I'll check on you tonight. Before she could respond, he was gone, the trailer door closing behind him with a finality that left her cold despite the blankets. True to his word, Axel dropped off her car that afternoon. He brought soup from Rosie's and painkillers stronger than what she had. Boss said to make sure you're comfortable, he explained, setting the supplies on her counter. That's nice of him. Valentina wrapped her cardigan tighter around herself. Is he coming by later? Axel's hesitation told her everything. He's tied up with club business. Asked me to check on you instead. I see. She forced a smile. Well, thank you for bringing everything. No problem. Axel lingered awkwardly. You need anything else? I'm good. Just tired. After he left, Valentina stood in the center of her trailer, feeling more alone than she had since leaving California. Whatever progress she and Duke had made had evaporated overnight. She'd done or said something to drive him away again. Story of her life. 3 days passed with no sign of Duke. Valentina returned to work, her strength mostly recovered. Duke was conspicuously absent from the garage, leaving just before she arrived or with important meetings when she was there. Did something happen between you two? Axel asked on the third day, dropping a stack of invoices on her desk. Why would you think that? His eyebrow rose. Because Duke's acting like you've got the plague. And you look like someone kicked your puppy every time he dodges you. Valentina flushed. It's complicated. Always is with you two. Axel leaned on her desk. Look, I don't know what went down, but Duke's been in a foul mood since he stayed at your place. Whatever you did. I didn't do anything, she snapped. He's the one avoiding me. Axel held up his hands. Hey, not my business. Just saying, maybe clear the air before the rest of us suffer. When he left, Valentina sat staring at the invoices, unseeing. She was tired of this dance, tired of the push and pull between them. Either they could move forward, or they needed to let go completely. Decision made, she waited until the garage emptied for the night. Duke's light still burned in his office. Taking a deep breath, she knocked. What? His voice was sharp. She pushed open the door. We need to talk. Duke looked up from his paperwork, surprise flashing across his face before his expression shuddered. I'm busy. Too bad. She closed the door behind her. You've been avoiding me for days. It stops now. I haven't been avoiding you. Bullshit. She crossed the office, planting her hands on his desk. What did I say in my sleep, Duke? What was so terrible that you can't even look at me anymore? His jaw tightened. It's not what you said. Then what? Duke stood, the chair rolling back with the force of his movement. You really want to know? Fine. You called me James. Valentina froze. What? You were having a nightmare. I tried to wake you, and you grabbed my hand and called me James. His laugh was bitter. Reality check I didn't know I needed. Horror washed through her. Duke, no. It wasn't. It's fine, Valentine. He moved around the desk, keeping it between them. I get it. 10 years is a long time. You built a life with him. Of course he's still in your head. That's not. I said it's fine. His voice hardened. We're adults. We have history. Doesn't mean we have a future. The words struck like physical blows. Valentina stepped back. Is that what you think? That I'm still hung up on James? Duke shrugged, the gesture too casual to be real. Aren't you? He's still your husband. And judging by the way he tracked you down, he's not ready to let you go. I left him, she reminded him, anger building. I walked away from that life. And came running back to your hometown. Duke's eyes were cold. Convenient. What's that supposed to mean? It means maybe you're just using me as a rebound. A way to feel something after your marriage crashed. He crossed his arms. I'm not interested in being your consolation prize, Valentine. Fury rose in her chest, hot and cleansing. You arrogant, self-centered ass. You think this is about you? That I came back here for you, didn't you? His voice was dangerously soft.
No.
I came back because I had nowhere else to go. The words tore from her throat. Because this place, for all its flaws, was the only home I ever really had. Yes, you're part of those memories. But don't flatter yourself thinking you're the reason I came back. Duke's expression flickered, surprise, then something like respect. Fair enough, he said after a moment. But it doesn't change anything. Whatever this is between us, it's not healthy. We're both carrying too much baggage. So that's it? You took care of me when I was sick, held my hand while I slept, and now you're just done? It was a mistake. Duke looked away. I let things get blurry. It won't happen again. The dismissal stung worse than she expected. Valentina straightened, pride the only thing keeping her upright.
Fine.
Message received. She turned toward the door. I'll have my resignation on your desk tomorrow. Don't be dramatic. I'm not being dramatic. I'm being practical. She faced him again. You can't even look at me. How are we supposed to work together? We're adults. We'll manage. Maybe you can. I can't. The admission cost her, but it was true. Seeing you every day, pretending there's nothing between us. I can't do it, Duke. Something flashed in his eyes. Pain. Quickly masked. There isn't anything between us. Not anymore. The lie hung in the air between them, so blatant it almost had physical form. Valentina crossed the room without thinking, stopping inches from him. Say that again, she challenged, voice barely above a whisper. Say it like you mean it. Duke's jaw clenched, his eyes darkening as they dropped to her lips. Valentine, don't. Don't what? Don't call your bluff? Don't make you admit there's still something here? She stepped closer, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body. You're a lot of things, Duke Reynolds, but you've never been a liar. Don't start now. His breathing changed, growing heavier. His hands fisted at his sides, like he was physically restraining himself from touching her. This isn't a good idea, he warned, voice rough. Probably not. She tilted her face up to his. But when have we ever done the sensible thing? The last thread of Duke's control snapped. His hands came up to frame her face, tilting it higher as his mouth crashed down on hers. The kiss was nothing like the careful ones they'd shared in their youth. This was raw, desperate, years of suppressed want breaking free at once. Valentina gasped against his lips, her hands clutching at his shoulders for support as her knees weakened. Duke backed her against the desk, lifting her onto it without breaking the kiss. Her legs parted instinctively, allowing him to step between them, bringing their bodies flush. His hands tangled in her hair, angling her head for deeper access. Heat pooled low in her belly, a hunger she'd forgotten she could feel. Valentina arched into him, wanting more, needing more. The sound Duke made, half groan, half her name, sent shivers down her spine. His mouth left hers to trail fire down her neck, finding the sensitive spot below her ear that he somehow still remembered. Her nails dug into his shoulders in response, drawing another groan from him. Time ceased to exist. There was only sensation, his mouth, his hands, the solid warmth of him pressed against her after so long apart. Reality intruded in the form of a phone ringing, Duke's, on the desk beside them. The jarring sound broke the spell. Duke pulled back, his breathing ragged, pupils blown wide. For a moment, they just stared at each other, both stunned by what had just happened. Then something in his expression changed. Shuddered. Closed off. "That was a mistake," he said, voice rough as he stepped away from her. The words hit like ice water. Valentina slid off the desk on shaky legs, straightening her disheveled clothes. "A mistake," she repeated. "Right." Duke ran a hand through his hair, not looking at her. "We can't do this. There's too much at stake." "What's at stake, Duke? Your pride? Your control?" "Your safety," he shot back. "Your ex-husband is still out there, still looking for you." "I can't," he broke off, jaw tight. "We need to focus on that, not this." Valentina laughed, the sound hollow. "That's convenient. Hide behind concern for my safety instead of admitting you're scared." "I'm not scared." "Yes, you are. You're terrified of feeling something real." She moved toward the door, dignity intact despite her trembling hands. "Well, guess what? So am I. Difference is, I'm willing to admit it." She paused at the door, not looking back. "Don't worry about my resignation. I'll find another job. You won't have to see me again. Valentine." But she was already gone, the door closing behind her with a final click. Outside, the night air cooled her heated skin but did nothing for the ache in her chest. She'd crossed a line they both had, and now there was no going back. Only forward, alone. Again. Chapter 9. Small towns ran on gossip like engines ran on fuel. By the time Valentina started her new job at Riverdale's only bookstore 3 days later, everyone knew she'd left Duke's garage. Speculation ran rampant. They'd fought, they'd slept together, he'd fired her, she'd quit in tears. None came close to the truth, that a single kiss had shattered the walls she'd built around her heart. "Heard you and Duke Reynolds finally exploded," Mrs. Winters said as Valentina rang up her romance novels. The elderly woman had no filter and fewer boundaries. "Bound to happen, way you two were circling each other." "We weren't circling anything," Valentina replied, forcing a smile. "Coffee's at the counter, if you want some while you browse." Mrs. Winters waved her off. "Don't change the subject, dear. That man's been walking around like a thundercloud since you started working for him. Now he's even worse." The thought of Duke's suffering gave Valentina a petty satisfaction she immediately felt guilty for. "I'm sure he's fine. HMPF." Mrs. Winters gathered her books. "Mark my words, that boy's been carrying a torch for you since high school. Some fires never go out completely." After she left, Valentina leaned against a counter, the quiet of the bookstore a balm to her frayed nerves. Surrounded by stories of other people's lives, she could almost forget the mess she'd made of her own. The bell over the door jingled, and she looked up to see Patty enter, determination written across her face. "We're going out tonight," Patty announced without preamble. "Girls' night. No arguments." "I'm not really in the mood." "Did I ask if you were in the mood? You've been holed up in that trailer for days moping." "I haven't been moping," Valentina protested. "I've been settling into my new job." Patty rolled her eyes. "You've been hiding. From Duke, from your ex, from life. Well, tonight you're taking a break from all that. Ruby's Bar, 8 o'clock. Wear something nice." Before Valentina could argue further, Patty was gone, leaving only her cloud of perfume behind. Ruby's Bar sat on the outskirts of town, a step up from Mac's but still firmly blue-collar. Inside, neon beer signs cast a colorful glow over pool tables and worn leather booths. A jukebox played classic rock in the corner. The Friday night crowd was already 3 drinks in when Valentina arrived. She spotted Patty and Sandy at a booth near the back, cocktails in hand. Taking a deep breath, she weaved through the crowd, ignoring the stares that followed her. In her simple black dress and leather jacket, the only nice clothes she'd grabbed when leaving James, she stood out among the jeans and flannel. There she is. Sandy waved her over. Thought you might bail on us. I considered it, Valentina admitted, sliding into the booth. Patty pushed a drink toward her. Vodka cranberry. Figured you needed something stronger than wine tonight. Valentina took a grateful sip, the alcohol burning pleasantly down her throat. Thanks. So, Sandy leaned forward. You gonna tell us what happened with Duke, or do we have to drag it out of you? Nothing happened. Bullshit. Patty signaled for another round. That man's been walking around like someone shot his dog. And you've got that look. What look? I kissed him, and now I regret everything look. Sandy's grin was knowing. Don't deny it. We've all been there. Heat rose to Valentina's cheeks. It was a mistake. The best ones usually are, Patty said wryly. Doesn't mean it wasn't worth making. The conversation mercifully shifted to town gossip as their drinks arrived. Valentina relaxed gradually, the alcohol and easy camaraderie loosening the knot of tension she'd carried for days. By her third drink, she was almost enjoying herself, laughing at Sandy's outrageous stories about her online dating disasters. Men are trash, Sandy concluded, raising her glass in a toast. Present company accepted, of course. Valentina followed her gaze to a group of riot kings who'd just entered, Duke conspicuously absent among them. Axel spotted their table and nudged his companions, making a beeline toward them. Ladies, he greeted, tipping an imaginary hat. Mind if we join you? Before anyone could answer, they were pulling up chairs, squeezing into the booth. Valentina found herself pressed between Patty and Denny, acutely aware of the empty chair Axel left beside him. Duke coming later? Patty asked casually, too casually. Axel's eyes flickered to Valentina.
Nah.
He's tied up with business. His loss, Sandy said, raising her glass. More fun for us. Drinks flowed. Music played. Valentina felt herself relaxing despite the watchful eyes of Duke's crew. They were good guys, underneath the leather and attitude. Denny kept them laughing with stories from the road. Axel bought rounds without being asked. Dance with me, Denny said when a slow song came on. He held out his hand to Valentina. For old time's sake. She hesitated. I don't think. One dance, he insisted. Duke's not here to glare at me for it. Against her better judgment, she let him lead her to the small dance floor. Denny kept a respectful distance, one hand on her waist, the other holding hers. He's not doing so hot, you know, Denny said after a moment. Duke. Valentina stiffened. Is that why you asked me to dance?
To talk about him?
Partly. Denny's expression was unusually serious. Look, whatever happened between you two, it's messing him up. He's distracted, making mistakes. In our line of work, that's dangerous. What do you want me to do about it? Talk to him. Clear the air. Denny shrugged. Or don't. But I thought you should know, he's been defending you all over town. Valentina missed a step.
What?
People talk. Say you came back to cause trouble, that you're using Duke for protection from your rich husband. Denny met her eyes. Duke's shut down every rumor. Threatened to kick the ass of anyone who speaks badly about you. Her heart squeezed painfully. Why would he do that? You really have to ask? Denny's laugh was disbelieving. After all this time, you still don't get it? The song ended before she could respond. As they returned to the table, the door to Ruby's swung open, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Duke stood in the entrance, scanning the crowd until his eyes landed on their table. On her. Even from across the room, she could see the tension in his jaw, the rigid set of his shoulders. He crossed to the bar without acknowledging them, ordered a drink, and took it to a booth in the corner. Alone. Well, this got interesting, Patty murmured. Told you he'd show up. Valentina glared at her. You planned this. Me? Never. Her smile was anything but innocent. Though I might have mentioned to Axel that we'd be here tonight. Betrayed, Valentina turned to Axel, who raised his hands. Don't look at me like that. Man needs to get out sometimes. I'm leaving. Valentina grabbed her purse, but Patty caught her arm. Running again? The challenge in her friend's eyes was clear. That's your solution to everything, isn't it? The truth stung. What do you want from me, Patty? I want you to stop hiding. To face whatever's going on between you two. Patty glanced toward Duke's solitary figure. He came here tonight knowing you'd be here. That means something. Did it? Or was it just coincidence? Another twist of fate throwing them together in this small town? Only one way to find out. I need another drink, Valentina said, sliding out of the booth. Instead of heading to the bar, she walked straight to Duke's table. He looked up, surprise flashing across his face before his expression shuddered. Valentine. Mind if I sit? She didn't wait for an answer, sliding into the booth across from him. Duke's eyes narrowed. Thought you were with your friends. I was. Now I'm here. She met his gaze steadily. Denny says you've been defending me around town. A muscle jumped in his jaw. Denny talks too much. Is it true? Duke took a long drink instead of answering, his eyes never leaving hers. When he set the glass down, his voice was low. What do you want, Valentine? The truth. For once. She leaned forward. Why defend me after everything that's happened? Because whatever is between us stays between us. His voice hardened. No one else gets to judge you. Not in my town.
His town.
The possessiveness in those two words sent a shiver down her spine. I thought you wanted nothing to do with me, she said quietly. What I want doesn't matter. Duke's laugh was bitter. Never has. It matters to me. The admission hung between them, vulnerable and raw. Duke's expression shifted, softened for a heartbeat before hardening again. Don't. The word was rough, almost pained. Don't play games, Valentine. Not tonight. I'm not playing games. She reached across the table, not quite touching his hand. I'm tired of running. Tired of pretending there's nothing here. Duke stared at her outstretched hand, conflict evident in every line of his face. The moment stretched, taut with possibility. A shadow fell across their table. Well, isn't this cozy? Valentina froze at the familiar voice. Slowly, she looked up to see James standing there, immaculate in his tailored suit, so out of place in this bar it would have been laughable under different circumstances. James. His name came out a whisper. What are you doing here? Looking for my wife. His smile was cold, his eyes colder as they shifted to Duke. And here she is, cozied up with the local trash. Duke's body tensed, poised for action. You want to rethink those words, friend. James's smile never wavered. I'm not your friend. And I'm not here to fight. I'm here to take my wife home. Ex-wife, Valentina corrected, finding her voice. The divorce papers should have arrived by now. Funny thing about papers. James's tone was conversational, but his eyes were hard. They're so easy to misplace. Duke's hand moved to rest on the table, open ready. The lady said she's not going anywhere with you. The lady isn't your concern. James looked back at Valentina. We need to talk. Privately. Across the room, she saw Axel and the others watching, bodies tense, waiting for a signal from Duke. The situation could escalate in seconds. Fine, she said quickly. Outside. 5 minutes. Valentine. Duke started, but she cut him off with a look. It's fine. I'll handle this. She stood, grabbing her jacket. 5 minutes, James. That's all you get. Outside, the night air was cool against her heated skin. Valentina crossed her arms, keeping distance between herself and James. Say what you came to say, then leave. Is that any way to greet your husband? James stepped closer. He looked the same, handsome, polished, cold. You left without saying goodbye. It hurt, Val. Like finding you in bed with my sister hurt? The words had lost their sting. Somehow, in the weeks since she'd left, the betrayal had dulled to a distant ache. James had the grace to look uncomfortable. That was a mistake. One I regret deeply. Save it. She held up a hand. I'm not interested in your regrets or your excuses. Sign the divorce papers and let me go. I can't do that. His expression hardened. We built a life together, Val. 10 years. You don't throw that away over one indiscretion. One. She laughed incredulously. How many times did you sleep with my sister, James? How many other women were there? His silence was answer enough. That's what I thought. Valentina stepped back. We're done. I've moved on. To him, James jerked his head toward the bar, where Duke now stood in the doorway, watching them. That's why you came back here, isn't it? To that biker thug from your past.
No.
The truth came easily. I came back because this was the only place I knew to go. Duke was unexpected. Right. James's laugh was ugly. So unexpected you're already sleeping with him. That's none of your business. She turned to go, but James caught her arm. It is my business. Everything about you is my business, Val. Always has been. His grip tightened. You think you can just walk away from me? From everything we built? Let go of me. Her voice was steady despite her racing heart. Not until you listen. She said let go. Duke's voice cut through the night, dangerous as a blade. He stood a few feet away, body coiled with barely contained violence. James's grip loosened, but he didn't release her completely. This is between me and my wife. Ex-wife, Valentina corrected again, tugging her arm free. And this conversation is over. Is it? James's smile was thin. What about the offshore accounts, Val? The ones in your name? The ones the SEC is so interested in? Confusion swept through her. What are you talking about? The accounts I set up in your name. For tax purposes. His eyes glittered. The ones that could send you to prison for a very long time if the authorities looked too closely. Cold washed through her. You're lying. Am I? Check your email. The SEC has been trying to reach you. James stepped closer, his voice dropping. Come home, Val. We can fix this together. Or stay here and see what happens when they find you. Duke moved then, placing himself between them. You're threatening her. I'm offering her protection. James straightened his jacket. Something you can't give her. I think you should leave. Duke's voice was deadly quiet.
Now.
For a tense moment, Valentina thought James might challenge him. Then his shoulders relaxed and he stepped back. Think about what I said, Val. His eyes found hers over Duke's shoulder. You have until the end of the week to come home. After that, I can't help you. He walked to his rental car, slid inside, and drove away without looking back. Valentina stood frozen, mind racing with the implications of his words. Valentine. Duke turned to her, concern etched in his features. What did he mean, accounts in your name? I don't know. Her voice sounded distant, even to her own ears. I never handled our finances. James took care of everything. Duke's expression darkened. He's setting you up, using you as a fall guy for something illegal. The possibility had already occurred to her. James was ruthless in business. It was what had first attracted her to him, that drive and determination. How far would he go to protect himself? I need to check my email, she said, voice shaking. I need to know if he's telling the truth. Duke's hand found hers, warm and steady.
Come on.
We'll figure this out. This time, she didn't pull away. This time, she let herself lean on his strength, just a little. As they walked back to the bar, Duke's crew emerged, forming a protective circle around them. Valentina felt their silent support like a physical presence. Everything okay, boss? Axel asked, eyes scanning the parking lot. Duke's hand tightened around hers.
No.
But it will be. The promise in his voice, the determination, it made her believe, just for a moment, that they could face whatever came next. Together. Back inside, Patty and Sandy waited anxiously at their table. Duke led Valentina past them, toward the rear exit. Where are we going? She asked as they stepped into the alley behind the bar. Duke pulled out his keys. My place. It's safer than your trailer right now. She wanted to argue, to insist she could handle this alone. But the truth was, she was tired of being alone. Tired of carrying everything by herself. Okay, she said simply and followed him to his bike. The engine roared to life beneath them, a familiar vibration she hadn't felt in years. Valentina wrapped her arms around Duke's waist, pressed her face between his shoulder blades, and held on as they tore into the night. Behind them, James's threats faded like tail lights in the distance. Ahead lay uncertainty, danger, and maybe, just maybe, a chance at redemption. Chapter 10. Duke's apartment surprised her. Located above his garage, it was clean, spacious, and tastefully furnished, a far cry from the bachelor pad she'd expected. Hardwood floors, leather furniture, and surprisingly good art on the walls. "What?" Duke asked, catching her expression as she looked around. "Expected empty pizza boxes and beer cans?" "Maybe." Valentina set her purse on the coffee table. "It's nice. Doesn't really match the whole outlaw biker image." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Don't tell anyone. Bad for my reputation." He moved to the kitchen, returning with 2 beers. Valentina accepted one gratefully, the cold bottle soothing against her palm. "Computers in the office." Duke nodded toward a doorway off the living room. "You can check your email there." Alone in his office, Valentina stared at the login screen, heart pounding. What would she find? Was James bluffing, or had he really set her up to take a fall? Her inbox loaded. Dozens of unread messages filled the screen, most from the period right after she'd left, James and Melanie alternating between pleading and threatening. She scrolled past them until 3 bolded subject lines caught her eye. SEC investigation. Urgent action required. SEC formal notice of investigation. Final notice. Porter International Holdings. Her hands shook as she clicked the most recent. The message was formal, detached. The SEC was investigating accounts linked to Porter International Holdings for suspicious activity. Multiple attempts to contact her had gone unanswered. Failure to respond would result in escalation of legal measures. The other messages contained similar warnings, growing more urgent with each one. The final email outlined potential penalties, including fines and imprisonment. Valentina closed her eyes, nausea rising. James had done this. Created accounts in her name, used her identity for whatever shady dealings he'd been conducting, and now he was using the threat of prosecution to force her back to him. "Valentine." Duke's voice came from the doorway. "You okay?" She looked up, vision blurring with unshed tears. He wasn't bluffing. Duke crossed to her, reading over her shoulder. His expression darkened with each line. When he finished, he straightened, jaw tight with anger. "Son of a bitch," he muttered. "He's using you." "I didn't know." Her voice cracked. "I swear I didn't know anything about these accounts." "I believe you." Duke knelt beside her chair, bringing himself to eye level. "This isn't your fault. Tell that to the SEC." She laughed hollowly. "I was so stupid, signing whatever he put in front of me. Never questioning." "You trusted your husband." "That's not stupid." "It is when your husband is James Porter." Valentina ran a hand through her hair. "What am I going to do, Duke? If I don't go back with him?" "You're not going back to him." Duke's voice hardened. "Whatever this is, we'll figure it out. I know people, lawyers who can help." "Criminal lawyers?" She raised an eyebrow. "Somehow I doubt your MC connections will help with the SEC." "You'd be surprised." His half-smile didn't reach his eyes. "The club has legitimate business interests. We know people in all kinds of fields." Valentina wasn't sure if that was reassuring or terrifying. But right now, she didn't have the luxury of being picky about help. "Okay," she agreed. "But James gave me until the end of the week. That's only 3 days. Then we work fast." Duke stood. "First thing tomorrow, I'll make some calls. Tonight, you need rest." The thought of sleep seemed impossible with her mind racing. "I don't think I can." "Try." Duke's hand came to rest on her shoulder, a brief, warm pressure. "You can take my bed. I'll sleep on the couch." She started to protest, but the exhaustion of the day caught up with her suddenly. "Thank you." In Duke's bathroom, she washed her face with cold water, staring at her reflection in the mirror. How had she ended up here? Running from one life, potentially facing prison for crimes she didn't commit, turning to a man she'd walked away from a decade ago. His t-shirt was soft against her skin when she slipped it on, the scent of him surrounding her. Too big, it hung to her mid-thigh, making her feel both vulnerable and strangely protected. Duke was making up the couch when she emerged from the bedroom. He glanced up, his expression changing as he took in the sight of her in his shirt. Something dark and heated flashed in his eyes before he looked away. "Need anything else?" he asked, voice rougher than before.
No.
She lingered in the doorway. "Thank you. For everything." He nodded, not meeting her eyes. "Get some sleep." Morning brought weak sunlight and the smell of coffee. Valentina padded into the kitchen to find Duke on the phone, his back to her as he spoke in low, intense tones. "Need to move fast. By Friday." A pause. "Yeah, I know. But this is important." Another pause. "Thanks. I owe you one." He turned as he hung up, stopping short at the sight of her. For a moment, neither spoke. The morning light through the kitchen window caught on his features, softening them. With his hair still mussed from sleep and stubble darkening his jaw, he looked younger, less guarded. "Morning," she said finally. "Morning." He gestured to the coffee maker. "Help yourself." She poured a cup, hyper-aware of him watching her movements. "Who is that on the phone?" "Lawyer friend. Specializes in financial crimes." Duke leaned against the counter. "He's willing to look at your case, but he needs documents. Anything with your signature that might be related to those accounts." "I don't have anything. Everything's back in California. We'll find another way."
Duke sipped his coffee.
"The important thing is to establish you had no knowledge of or control over those accounts." Valentina nodded, grateful for his certainty when her own had crumbled. "Thank you for believing me." "You didn't do this, Valentine." His voice was firm. "I know you."
Did he, though?
After 10 years apart? After everything that had changed between them? As if reading her thoughts, Duke set down his cup. "The Valentine Ross I knew wouldn't get mixed up in financial fraud. And whatever else has changed about you, I don't think your core has." The assessment struck her, simple but profound. He was right. Despite all the trappings of Valentina Porter, the polished exterior, the society wife persona, at her core, she was still Valentine Ross. Still the girl who valued honesty, who'd run from a lie rather than live in it. And steady on the bars, eyes fixed on the road ahead. "What's the plan?" she asked, needing to focus on action rather than introspection. "For today? You stay here, out of sight. I've got club business to handle in the morning, but I'll be back this afternoon." Duke's expression grew serious. "Valentine, there's something I've been thinking about." The shift in his tone made her tense. "What?" "You need to learn to defend yourself. If James comes back." "I know how to throw a punch," she interrupted. "That's not enough." Duke crossed his arms. "You need to be able to ride." "A motorcycle?" Surprise replaced her apprehension. "Why?" "Because sometimes the best defense is being able to get away fast." His gaze was steady. "And because everyone should know the freedom of controlling their own machine." The thought sent a thrill through her, mingled excitement and fear. She'd always been a passenger, never the driver. "I don't know if I can." "You can." Duke's confidence warmed her. "I'll teach you. This afternoon, if you're up for it." A distraction from the nightmare James had created. A skill that might serve her well if she needed to run again. "Okay," she agreed. "This afternoon." Duke's teaching bike was smaller than his custom Harley. A Sportster, he called it, lower to the ground and more forgiving for beginners. They'd driven to an abandoned airstrip outside town, where miles of cracked concrete stretched empty in all directions. "Basics first," Duke said, walking her through the controls. "Clutch, throttle, brake, gears." Valentina listened intently, trying to absorb everything. When he finally stepped back, gesturing for her to mount the bike, her hands trembled slightly. "I'll be right here," Duke promised, standing beside her. "Just feel it out. Get comfortable." The bike was heavy between her legs, solid and powerful. She gripped the handlebars, testing the throttle, the clutch, feeling the machine respond to her touch. "Good," Duke nodded. Now start it up. The engine roared to life beneath her, vibrating through her body. Valentina couldn't help the smile that spread across her face. That's it, Duke encouraged, his own smile matching hers. Now, slowly let out the clutch while giving it a little gas. She did as instructed, and the bike lurched forward before stalling. Frustration flared. It's okay, Duke said quickly. Everyone stalls their first time. Try again. 3 more attempts, 3 more stalls. Sweat beaded on her forehead despite the cool afternoon. I can't do this, she muttered after the 5th stall. Yes, you can. Duke moved closer, his hand covering hers on the throttle. You're overthinking it. Feel it instead. His closeness, the warmth of his hand on hers, it was distracting in the best way. Valentina took a deep breath, focused on the sensation of the bike beneath her, the engine's rumble. Again, Duke said, stepping back. Clutch in, first gear, gas, and ease the clutch out slowly. This time, the bike moved forward smoothly, rolling across the concrete. Exhilaration swept through her as she kept it upright, moving in a wobbly but definite line. I'm doing it, she called out, half laughing. You're a natural. Duke jogged alongside her. Now, gentle on the brake to stop. She complied, bringing the bike to a halt without stalling. Duke's grin was infectious, pride shining in his eyes. That was perfect, he said. Want to try again? Bit more speed this time. For the next hour, Valentina circled the airstrip, gaining confidence with each pass. Duke was a patient teacher, offering guidance without taking over, letting her find her way. By late afternoon, she was shifting gears, making turns, even practicing emergency stops. The focus required pushed everything else from her mind. James, the SEC, even the unresolved tension between her and Duke. There was only the bike, the wind, and the sense of control she'd been missing for so long. You're getting cocky now, Duke called as she executed a particularly sharp turn. Ease up. But confidence had replaced her initial fear. Valentina opened the throttle wider, feeling the surge of power as the bike responded. The rush was intoxicating, the speed blurring the edges of her vision. Then she hit a patch of loose gravel. The back tire slid, the bike wobbling dangerously. For a terrifying moment, she fought for control, instinct warring with panic. The bike went down, throwing her clear. She hit the ground hard, rolling across rough concrete before coming to a stop. Valentine. Duke's shout seemed far away, though his footsteps pounded closer. Don't move. Pain radiated from her hip and shoulder, but it was the humiliation that burned hotter. She'd gotten overconfident, exactly what he'd warned against. Duke knelt beside her, hands hovering over her body, afraid to touch. Are you hurt?
Talk to me.
Only my pride, she managed, trying to sit up.
Easy.
His hand supported her back. Take it slow. Anything broken? She did a mental inventory. Scraped palms. Bruised hip. Sore shoulder.
No.
Just banged up. Relief washed over his face, quickly replaced by anger. What the hell were you thinking? I told you to ease up. I know. I got carried away. Shame colored her cheeks. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't cut it if you break your neck. Duke helped her stand, his touch gentler than his words. Riding isn't a game, Valentine. I know that. Irritation flared through her embarrassment. I made a mistake. It happens. Not on my watch. His voice softened as he examined her scraped hands. You scared me. The admission hung between them, honest and unguarded. Valentina looked up, finding his eyes dark with concern and something deeper. I'm okay, she assured him. Really? Duke didn't release her hands. You could have been seriously hurt, but I wasn't. She attempted a smile. And now I know what not to do, right? He didn't return the smile. His thumbs traced circles on her palms, just shy of the scrapes. We should clean these up. The bike lay on its side several yards away, engine still running. Duke led her to it, righted it with ease, and killed the engine. Can you ride on the back of mine? He asked. Or are you too sore? I can ride. sitting behind Duke, arms around his waist. It was familiar territory, even after all these years. Safe territory. His larger bike waited at the edge of the airstrip. Duke mounted it first, then held out a hand to help her on. The movement sent a jolt of pain through her hip, drawing a sharp intake of breath. Valentine. Concern laced his voice. I'm fine. She settled behind him, arms circling his waist loosely. Just a bit sore. Hold on tight. Duke started the engine. We'll take it slow. Despite his words, nothing about being pressed against Duke's back, feeling the solid warmth of him between her thighs, was slow. Memories flooded her, countless rides in their youth, her cheek against his leather jacket, the world falling away until there was only motion and the two of them. They rode in silence back to the garage, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the road. At some point, Valentina gave up the pretense of maintaining distance, letting her body mold to his back, her arms tightening around his middle. If Duke noticed, he didn't comment, but his hand came to rest briefly on hers where they locked across his stomach. Back at his apartment, Duke insisted on cleaning her scrapes despite her protests. In his bathroom, he knelt before her as she sat on the closed toilet lid, his movements gentle as he dabbed antiseptic on her palms. This might sting, he warned. It did, but Valentina barely noticed, too caught up in the care with which he treated her injuries. His head was bent over her hands, dark hair falling across his forehead. She resisted the urge to brush it back. Why did you offer to teach me? She asked quietly. After everything between us? Duke didn't look up.
Told you.
Everyone should know how to ride. That's not the whole reason. His hands stilled. Finally, he met her eyes. No, it's not. Then why? Duke sighed, sitting back on his heels. Because when you're on a bike, there's no pretending, no hiding, just you and the road, and whatever truth you're carrying. The assessment struck her deeply. And you thought I needed that? I think we both do. He resumed bandaging her hands, his touch clinical now. Too many lies between us, Valentine. Too many half-truths. The honesty was refreshing, if painful. Like what I said when I was sick. Calling you James? Duke's jaw tightened. That's not what happened. Confusion swept through her. But you said. I know what I said. He finished with her hands and stood, putting distance between them. I lied. Why? Because the truth was worse. Duke leaned against the sink, arms crossed. You didn't call me James. You said my name over and over, like you were drowning and I was air. Heat flooded her cheeks.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
His laugh was harsh. And then you said you loved me, that you'd never stopped, that everything else had been a lie. Valentina stared at him, heart pounding. Had she really said all that? Or was this another lie, a test? Why was that worse than calling you James? She whispered. Because I wanted to believe it. Duke's voice roughened. Because for a moment I did believe it. And then I remembered, you were delirious with fever. It wasn't real. What if it was? The words escaped before she could stop them. Duke's expression shuddered. Don't what? Tell you the truth. She stood, closing the distance between them. You just said there are too many lies between us. So here's the truth. I did love you. I never stopped. I just buried it so deep I couldn't feel it anymore. His eyes searched hers, looking for deception, for manipulation. And now I'm terrified. Her voice cracked. Of feeling anything. Of wanting anything. Of being vulnerable with anyone again. Especially you. Why especially me? Because you're the only one who could really hurt me. The admission cost her, but it was true. James's betrayal had wounded her pride. Duke had the power to wound her soul. He made a sound, half groan, half sigh. His hand came up, hovering near her cheek without touching, just as it had that night in her room above Max. I'd never hurt you, he said, voice low. Not intentionally. I know. She leaned imperceptibly toward his hand, not quite bridging the gap. That's what scares me most. They stood frozen in that almost touch, the space between his palm and her cheek charged with possibility. One move from either of them would change everything. A knock at the apartment door shattered the moment. Duke dropped his hand, stepping back. "That'll be Axel," he said, voice rough. "With news about your situation." Valentina nodded, somehow finding her voice. "I'll be right out." Alone in the bathroom, she stared at her reflection, flushed cheeks and bright eyes looking back at her. For the first time in weeks, maybe years, she recognized herself. Not Valentina Porter, society wife. Not even Valentine Ross, the girl who'd run away. Someone new. Someone who had fallen and gotten back up. Someone who was learning to ride her own path, despite the fear. She smiled at her reflection and, to her surprise, let out a small laugh, the first real one in longer than she could remember. Whatever came next, with James, with Duke, with her uncertain future, she would face it. Not running, not hiding. Riding through it, hands steady on the bars, eyes fixed on the road ahead. Chapter 11. Axel's news wasn't good. James Porter was still in town, staying at the executive suite at the Riverdale Inn. He'd been asking questions, showing Valentina's picture around. Worst of all, he'd hired local muscle, 2 ex-cons with reputations for doing anything for the right price. "Can't touch him legally," Axel explained, sprawled on Duke's couch. "Guy's got all his papers in order. Here on business, he says." Duke's jaw tightened. "What kind of business?" "Finding his wife." Axel's eyes flickered to Valentina. "Says you took some important documents when you left. Stuff that could hurt his company." "That's a lie." Valentina clutched her mug of tea. "I didn't take anything. Doesn't matter what's true." Duke paced the length of the living room. He's building a narrative, making himself look like the wronged party, while painting me as the thief. Valentina's laugh was bitter. "Clever. The lawyer's still working on the SEC angle," Duke said. "But it'll take time." Time she didn't have. James's ultimatum loomed. 3 days, now down to less than 2. "I can't hide forever," she said finally. "And I can't run again. Not with these accusations hanging over me." "What are you saying?" Duke stopped pacing, his expression wary. "I need to confront him. On my terms." She set down her mug with resolve. "Neutral ground, public place." "No way." Duke's refusal was immediate. "Too dangerous." "I'm not asking permission." Valentina stood, wincing slightly as her bruised hip protested. "I'm telling you what I'm going to do." Axel whistled low. "She still got that raw spine, boss." Duke ignored him, eyes locked on Valentina. "He could hurt you. Not in public." She crossed her arms. "And not if I have backup nearby." A silent communication passed between Duke and Axel, years of friendship distilled into a look. Axel nodded once and stood. "I'll round up the boys," he said. "Tell em to be subtle." After he left, Duke moved to the window, staring out at the darkening sky. "This is a bad idea. Got a better one?" "Yeah. You stay here, out of sight, while we handle Porter." The old Valentina, the one who'd married James, who'd let others make decisions for her, might have agreed. Might have hidden while men fought her battles. Not anymore. "I'm done hiding, Duke." She joined him at the window. "I'm done being afraid." He turned to look at her, really look at her, as if seeing something new in her face. Whatever he found there made his expression soften. "Where and when?" he asked finally. "Rosie's Diner. Noon tomorrow." Public enough to be safe, familiar enough to give her home field advantage. Sunday lunch rush. Place will be packed. Duke nodded reluctantly. "I'll be at the counter. Axel and Denny at separate tables. The rest outside, watching exits." "Thank you." She touched his arm briefly. For understanding. His hand covered hers, warm and calloused. "I don't understand, but I respect it." The words meant more than he could know. Valentina arrived at Rosie's early, choosing a booth near the back with a clear view of the door. She dressed with purpose, jeans, boots, and a simple black top. Not the polished society wife James would expect. Not the vulnerable woman he'd found at Ruby's. Duke sat at the counter, nursing coffee, his back to her but his eyes watching the door in the mirror. Axel and Denny occupied strategic tables. The message was clear. She had protection, whether James respected it or not. The bell over the door jingled at precisely noon. James entered, immaculate in a tailored suit that cost more than most Riverdale residents made in a month. He scanned the diner, his gaze passing over Duke without recognition before landing on Valentina. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "There you are." He crossed to her booth, sliding in across from her with the smooth confidence of a man accustomed to getting his way. "You look different." "I am different, clearly." His gaze took in her simple clothes, the fresh scrapes on her hands. "Having fun playing small-town girl again?" Valentina ignored the jab. "What do you want, James?" "Really? I told you at the bar. I want you to come home." He reached across the table, but she pulled her hands back. "We can work through this, Val. I made a mistake. A terrible one. But 10 years of marriage deserves a second chance. Like the second chance you gave me by framing me for financial crimes?" The words came out calmer than she felt. "Those offshore accounts in my name, that's your insurance policy, isn't it? Your way of making sure I don't leave." James's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in his eyes. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do." She leaned forward. "But here's what you don't know. I've already spoken to the SEC, explained the situation. They're very interested in your creative accounting." It was a bluff, but a calculated one. James's tell, a slight tightening around his eyes, told her it had landed. "You're lying." His voice remained smooth, but tension crept into his shoulders. "You wouldn't risk implicating yourself. I have nothing to hide." Another bluff. "Can you say the same?" For the first time, uncertainty crossed his features.
Good.
She pressed her advantage. "Sign the divorce papers, James. Walk away. Or I'll make sure every financial journalist in the country knows about Porter International's questionable practices." His composure cracked. "You ungrateful bitch. After everything I gave you. You gave me a cage. Called it a life." She smiled, the expression cold. "I've outgrown it." James's hand shot across the table, grabbing her wrist. "You think you can threaten me? You have no idea what I'm capable of." From the corner of her eye, Valentina saw Duke tense, ready to intervene. She gave a slight shake of her head. This was her battle. "Neither do you." She leaned closer, voice dropping. "You think I'm still that scared little girl you married? The one so desperate to escape this town she'd do anything, be anyone you wanted." She twisted her wrist free with a move Sandy had taught her years ago. "That girl is gone. And the woman who replaced her isn't afraid of you anymore." Shock registered on James's face, quickly masked. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is." Valentina stood, gathering her purse. "You have until tomorrow to leave town. After that, every financial regulator in the country gets copies of the documents I took when I left." Another bluff, but James could know that. His face paled slightly. "You're bluffing," he said, but uncertainty laced his voice. "Try me." She turned to leave, then paused. "One more thing. Stay away from Duke and his crew. They're not part of this." "Your boyfriend?" James sneered. "He's welcome to my leftovers." She laughed, genuinely amused. "That's where you're wrong, James. I was his long before I was ever yours. And that's what really bothers you, isn't it? That you were the consolation prize." The barb struck true. James flushed, anger darkening his features. "You'll regret this." "Only thing I regret is wasting 10 years with you." With that, she walked away, heading for the door without looking back. Outside, the bright sunlight felt like victory. She kept walking, spine straight, until she reached Duke's motorcycle parked around the corner. Only then did her knees start to shake. Duke found her there minutes later, her composure finally cracking as the adrenaline ebbed. "Hey." His voice was gentle. "You okay?" "I think so." She looked up at him, a wobbly smile finding its way to her lips. "I did it." "Yeah, you did." Pride shone in his eyes. "Thought I might have to step in when he grabbed you." "I handled it." "I saw that." Duke leaned against his bike beside her. What you said in there about having documents talking to the SEC? Complete bullshit. She laughed shakily. But he doesn't know that. Duke's smile was slow, appreciative. Damn, Valentine. That was some high-stakes poker. I learned from the best. Her shoulder bumped his. You always could bluff your way out of anything. His smile faded. Not everything. The weight of their shared history settled between them. Valentina looked away first. Will he leave?
Duke asked.
I don't know. She shrugged. But I don't think I care anymore. He can't hurt me now. No.
No.
The realization was liberating. Because I'm not what he thinks I am. I'm not his creation. I never was. Duke studied her face, something like wonder in his expression. Who are you then? The question should have been difficult. Instead, the answer came easily. I'm Valentine Ross. She smiled, the expression genuine. I always was. I just forgot for a while. Duke's hand found hers, fingers intertwining naturally. Welcome back. For the first time since returning to Riverdale, Valentina felt the truth of it. She was back. Not just in her hometown, but in herself. And it felt like freedom. Chapter 12. James left town the next day. Axel confirmed it, watching the black town car pull away from the Riverdale Inn, headed for the interstate. Think he's given up? Valentina asked Duke over dinner at his apartment, where she'd been staying since the confrontation. Duke shook his head. Men like Porter don't give up. They retreat, regroup. Great. So I've bought time, not freedom. Time is freedom. Duke pushed his plate away. And the lawyer's making progress with the SEC. Says he can prove the accounts were opened without your knowledge. Relief washed through her.
How?
Something about signature verification. IP addresses. Technical stuff. Duke shrugged. The important thing is, Porter's not as clever as he thinks. Valentina let that sink in. James wasn't infallible. He could be beaten at his own game. So what now? She asked.
Now.
Duke glanced at his watch. Now we celebrate. Small victory is still a victory. He disappeared into the kitchen, returning with a bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses. The good stuff. Been saving it. For what? His smile was enigmatic. For when it mattered. They moved to the living room, the whiskey burning pleasantly as they settled on opposite ends of the couch. Outside, rain began to fall, a gentle backdrop to the comfortable silence between them. Can I ask you something? Valentina said after her second glass. The alcohol had loosened her tongue, dulled her usual caution. Depends on the question. Why did you let me go? That night at the water tower. She traced the rim of her glass. You said you came after me, but not why you stopped. Duke was quiet so long she thought he might not answer. When he did, his voice was rough with memory. I did come after you. To the airport. He stared into his glass. Saw you in the terminal. You looked different already. Hair up, fancy clothes. Like you were shedding Riverdale, with every step. That wasn't it, she whispered. Let me finish. Duke took a sip, gathering his thoughts. I called your name. You turned, saw me. And for a second, just a second, there was something in your eyes. Relief, maybe. But then it was gone, replaced by something else. Something cold. Valentina remembered that moment. The shock of seeing him there, disheveled and desperate. The brief joy, immediately smothered by fear. Fear of giving up her dreams for him. Fear of staying trapped in Riverdale forever. I was scared, she admitted. Scared I'd choose you over everything else if you asked me to stay. Would you have? Yes. The truth was simple, devastating. That's why I turned away. Why I got on that plane. Because I knew I'd sacrifice my future for you, and I'd end up resenting you for it. Duke absorbed this, nodding slowly. And then I met James. He was everything Riverdale wasn't. Sophisticated, ambitious, worldly. She laughed hollowly. He promised me a bigger life. What he didn't mention was the cost. Which was? Myself. Valentina set down her glass. Bit by bit, year by year, I became what he wanted. Spoke how he wanted. Dressed how he wanted. until there was nothing left of Valentine Ross except in my dreams. Duke's expression softened, and in mine, the admission hung between them, delicate as spun glass. Valentina swallowed hard. "Your turn," she said. "What happened after the airport?" Duke leaned back, eyes distant with memory. "I drank. A lot. Started riding with the Kings more seriously. Got into trouble." His mouth curved in a self-deprecating smile. The usual clichés. Broken heart, bad decisions. "I'm sorry. Don't be. It was a long time ago." He refilled their glasses. "Besides, those bad decisions led to good things eventually. Built the garage. Made something of myself." "And the club?" she asked. "How did you become VP?" "Right place, right time. Old VP got busted for something stupid. I stepped up." Duke shrugged, but pride colored his voice. "Turned the Kings around. Less trouble, more legitimate business. We're still outlaws, but we're not criminals. Not anymore." Valentina could hear what he wasn't saying. He'd created something lasting, something that mattered. Just as she'd wanted to do when she left Riverdale. "What about you?"
Duke asked.
10 years with Porter. Any regrets besides the obvious? The question was more complicated than it seemed. Had she regretted her marriage before finding James with Melanie? Before the control became suffocating? "Not at first," she said honestly. "The first few years were not bad. James was attentive, generous. I thought I was happy. But there was always something missing. Some vital piece." She met Duke's eyes. "I blamed it on not having children, on living so far from family. It took me years to realize the missing piece was me." Duke nodded, understanding in his gaze. "When did you know it was over? Before you caught him with your sister?" "Last Christmas." The memory surfaced clearly. "We hosted this huge party at our house. Everything perfect, everyone important there. I was wearing this ridiculous dress that cost more than my car, playing the perfect hostess." She paused, the scene replaying in her mind. "I caught my reflection in a window. Didn't recognize myself. Not just how I looked, who I was. This smiling, nodding stranger wearing my face. What did you do?" "Nothing." Shame colored her voice. "I kept smiling, kept nodding, kept playing the role because I was too scared to do anything else. Until you caught him cheating." "Until I caught him cheating," she confirmed. "Funny how something so awful can also be a gift. It gave me permission to leave a life I'd been wanting to escape for years." Duke reached across the couch, his hand covering hers. "For what it's worth, I see you now. The real you." The simple statement nearly undid her. Valentina turned her hand to clasp his, needing the anchor. "I missed you," she whispered, the words inadequate for the decade of emptiness. "Even when I pretended I didn't. Even when I couldn't admit it to myself. I missed you every day." Duke's fingers tightened around hers. "I missed you too, Valentine. Like missing a limb. Something vital, gone." The rain intensified outside, drumming against the windows. Thunder rumbled in the distance. Neither moved to turn on a lamp as darkness gathered in the corners of the room. "Can I ask you something else?" Valentina's voice was soft in the growing dimness. "Anything. If I hadn't caught James cheating, if I hadn't come back, would you have moved on eventually? Really moved on?" Duke was quiet, considering the question with the seriousness it deserved. "I thought I had," he said finally. "Had relationships. Some serious. But they always ended the same way."
"How?"
"With them telling me I was in love with a ghost." His laugh was rueful. "Turns out they were right." The confession stole her breath. "Duke. Don't." He shook his head. "I'm not saying this to pressure you. We're different people now. Too much water under the bridge." "Is there?" she asked. "Too much." Instead of answering, Duke tugged gently on her hand, pulling her across the couch until she settled against his side, her head finding the hollow of his shoulder as if it had been designed for her. "I don't know," he said, his voice a rumble she felt through his chest. "But I'd like to find out." They fell silent, the only sounds the rain outside and their synchronized breathing. Valentina felt the day's tension drain from her body, replaced by a peace she'd forgotten could exist. "Tell me something you never told anyone else," she murmured, half asleep against him. "Something from these lost years." Duke's hand traced lazy patterns on her arm. "I went to California once. 3 years after you left." She shifted to look up at him. "You did?"
Yeah.
"Found your address from your mother. Drove out there like some lovesick fool." His laugh was self-deprecating. "Sat outside your house for hours, working up the courage to knock. Why didn't you?" "Saw you come home. With him." Duke's voice roughened. "You looked content. I couldn't bring myself to disrupt that. To be the ghost from your past when you'd clearly moved on." Valentina's throat tightened. "I wish you had knocked. You don't know that. You might have been happy then. I was settling for what I thought was happiness." She pressed closer to him. "There's a difference." Duke's arm tightened around her. "Your turn. Tell me something you never told anyone." Valentina closed her eyes, searching for a truth worthy of his. "I kept your jacket. The leather one you gave me the night of prom." "The one with the roses embroidered on the back?" Surprise colored his voice. "You took that to California?" "It was the only thing of yours I had." Shame heated her cheeks. "James found it once. I told him it was vintage, something I bought at a secondhand store. He hated it. Said it was tacky." "It was tacky," Duke admitted. "But you loved it." "I still do." She paused. "It's in storage in California. One of the things I couldn't bring myself to leave behind, even when I was running." Duke's hand found hers, fingers intertwining. "We'll get it back. Someday." The simple promise, we not you, warmed her more than the whiskey had. Valentina felt her eyes growing heavy, the combination of emotional exhaustion and Duke's steady heartbeat under her ear lulling her toward sleep. "I should go to bed," she murmured, making no move to rise. "Stay." Duke shifted to accommodate her more comfortably against him. "Just like this." And she did, drifting into the first dreamless sleep she'd had in years, anchored by the solid warmth of him beneath her, the steady rhythm of his breathing matching hers. Outside, the storm passed, leaving behind a wash-clean world waiting for morning. Chapter 13. For 3 days, nothing changed between them, and everything did. They circled each other in Duke's apartment, sharing meals, watching old movies, talking until late into the night. Touching but not too much. Casual brushes of hands, shoulders bumping, sitting close on the couch. A tension built, sweet and maddening, neither willing to shatter the fragile peace they'd found. On the 4th day, news came. Duke's lawyer friend called with an update on the SEC investigation. They had enough to clear Valentina, to prove the accounts were opened without her knowledge or consent. James was being investigated instead. "It's over," Duke said, hanging up the phone. "You're in the clear." Valentina stood frozen in his kitchen, disbelief warring with relief. "Really? Really?" His smile was genuine, unreserved. "Porter's going to have a lot of explaining to do. But you're free." Free. The word tasted strange on her tongue. Free from James. Free from the threat of prosecution. Free to what? Duke watched her, something careful in his expression. "What will you do now?" The question hung between them, weighted with possibility. Without the danger holding her in Riverdale, without needing Duke's protection, would she stay? Or would history repeat itself? "I don't know," she admitted. "I hadn't thought beyond surviving this." Duke nodded, his face giving nothing away.
Take your time.
No pressure. But there was pressure, the ticking clock of possibility, the awareness that choices had to be made. Stay or go. Risk or retreat. Duke or what? The emptiness of starting over somewhere new? "I should celebrate," she said finally. "We should celebrate." Duke's smile returned, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Name it. Anything you want." What did she want? The question echoed in her mind as evening fell, as they sat across from each other at Rosie's diner, sharing burgers and fries like they were teenagers again. As Duke drove them up to the old quarry, where the town spread out below them, twinkling lights in the darkness. As they sat on the hood of his truck, passing a beer between them, stars scattered above like diamonds on black velvet. "Remember when we used to come up here?" Duke asked, his voice low in the quiet night. How could I forget? The memories were vivid. Teenage fumbling, whispered promises, the world spread out below them like a map of possibilities. Seems like a lifetime ago. It was. Duke's profile was sharp against the night sky. We were different people then. Were we? She turned to study him. Or were we just unfinished versions of who we are now? He considered this, taking a slow sip of beer. Maybe. But a lot can happen in 10 years. A lot did happen. Good and bad. Valentina pulled her knees to her chest. No going back, right? Would you want to? If you could. The question deserved honesty. Sometimes, she admitted. But no. I wouldn't trade what I've learned, even if I had to learn it the hard way. Duke nodded, understanding in his silence. They sat together, comfortable in the quiet, until Valentina shivered in the cooling night air. Cold?
Duke asked.
A little. Instead of suggesting they leave, he shifted closer, his arm coming around her shoulders. Valentina leaned into him, the familiar shape of his body still somehow a perfect fit against hers, despite the years between. Duke. I'm staying. The decision crystallized as she spoke it. In Riverdale. Not because I have to, but because I want to. He went very still beside her. You sure about that? Yes. She turned to face him, close enough now that their breath mingled. This is home. It always was. Duke's eyes searched hers, looking for doubt, for hesitation. And what about? She silenced him with a kiss, gentle at first, a question more than an answer. Duke froze, then responded with equal care, his hand coming up to cradle her face, as if she might break. When they parted, his eyes remained closed for a moment, as if savoring the sensation. Valentine. I'm sure about this too, she whispered. About us. Whatever that means, whatever shape it takes. Duke's thumb traced her cheekbone, reverent. We should take this slow. There's no rush. But there was. 10 years of lost time stretched behind them, a decade of empty spaces where they should have been together. Valentina felt it keenly as she leaned in to kiss him again, deeper this time, with intent. Duke responded in kind, his restraint crumbling as he pulled her closer, one hand tangling in her hair. The kiss built, heat spiraling between them, familiar and new all at once. Valentina shifted, half climbing into his lap, needing to be closer. Valentine. His voice was rough when they broke apart, breathing hard. Not here. Not like this. For a moment, rejection stung. Then she understood. This was too important for the back of his truck, for rushed passion under the stars. This needed time, attention, the privacy to rediscover each other properly. Take me home, she said, and they both understood she didn't mean her trailer. Duke's bedroom was sparsely furnished but comfortable, a large bed with dark sheets, a dresser, bedside tables with lamps casting warm, golden light. Valentina stood in the doorway, suddenly shy despite her earlier boldness. Duke sensed her hesitation. We don't have to. I want to. She stepped closer, reaching for him. It's been a long time. Since it meant something. Understanding softened his features. For me too. That simple admission bridged the distance between them. Valentina moved into his arms, tilting her face up for his kiss. This time, there was no hesitation on either side. Years of wanting, of denying, of remembering rushed to the surface as their kisses deepened, grew desperate. Duke walked her backward toward the bed, his mouth never leaving hers. When her legs hit the edge, she sank down, pulling him with her until he braced himself above her, eyes dark with desire. You're sure? He asked one last time. In answer, Valentina reached for the hem of her shirt, drawing it over her head. Duke's sharp intake of breath as he took in the sight of her scent heat pooling low in her belly. Your turn, she whispered. Clothes fell away, his shirt, her jeans, his belt. Each new expanse of skin revealed was explored with hands and lips, relearning territories once known by heart, now changed by time. A new scar on his shoulder. the softness at her hips that hadn't been there at 20. Beautiful, Duke murmured against her collarbone. Always were. Always will be. His hands were calloused now, roughened by years of working on engines. The contrast of those work-hardened palms against her softer skin made Valentina shiver with pleasure. She arched into his touch, greedy for more. When they were finally skin to skin, the world narrowed to sensation, his weight above her, the heat of him against her, between her thighs. Duke took his time, despite their mutual urgency, kissing his way down her body as if memorizing her anew. Valentina let herself be selfish, taking the pleasure he offered without restraint. With James, sex had become performative, another role to play. With Duke, there was no performance, only raw honesty. She guided his hand where she needed it, told him what felt good, what she wanted more of. When he finally joined their bodies, the sensation was overwhelming, completion, homecoming, rightness. Duke stilled, forehead pressed to hers, both adjusting to the intensity of the moment. "Okay?" he asked, voice strained with the effort of holding back. "Perfect," she breathed, and meant it. They moved together, finding a rhythm that spoke of muscle memory, of bodies that remembered each other despite the years apart. It wasn't the frantic passion of youth, but something deeper, deliberate, intense, every sensation heightened by the awareness of what they'd lost and found again. Valentina watched Duke's face above her, the concentration in his furrowed brow, the tightness in his jaw as he fought for control, the naked emotion in his eyes when they met hers. This was Duke as she'd never seen him, completely unguarded, vulnerable in his wanting of her. Her release built slowly, then all at once, breaking over her in waves that had her gasping his name. Duke followed moments later, his body tensing above her, a groan torn from deep in his chest. Afterward, they lay tangled together, catching their breath. Duke pressed kisses to her shoulder, her neck, the corner of her mouth, as if reassuring himself she was still there, still real. "That was—" he started, then trailed off, apparently at a loss for words.
"Yeah."
Valentina smiled against his chest. "It was. It wasn't perfect, not really. There had been awkward moments, brief fumbles, the natural disconnects of bodies relearning each other. But it had been real, honest in a way that had left them both shaken." Duke shifted to look at her, brushing hair from her face with gentle fingers. "What are you thinking?" "That I've missed this." She traced patterns on his chest. "Not just the sex, the after. Being with someone who really sees me." His expression softened. "I always saw you, Valentine, even when you didn't want to be seen." The truth of it pierced her. All those years with James, performing the role of perfect wife, and here was Duke, still seeing beneath the surface to the woman she really was. "I see you, too," she whispered. "The boy you were, the man you've become." Duke pulled her closer, tucking her against his side as if she belonged there. Maybe she did. Maybe she always had. "Stay," he murmured into her hair, the words somewhere between question and plea. "Tonight? For as long as you want." His arms tightened around her. "Forever, if that's what you decide." The offer, open-ended, without pressure, warmed her from the inside out. It wasn't a demand or an ultimatum, just a door, held open, waiting for her to walk through when she was ready. "I'll stay tonight," she said, pressing a kiss to his chest, right over his heart. "The rest, let's take it one day at a time." Duke's satisfied hum vibrated beneath her cheek. "One day at a time," he agreed. "Starting with tomorrow." Tomorrow. The word held promise now, rather than dread. For the first time since returning to Riverdale, maybe for the first time in years, Valentina looked forward to waking up. Because when she did, Duke would be there. And that made all the difference. Chapter 14. Morning light filtered through Duke's bedroom curtains, painting stripes across the rumpled sheets. Valentina woke slowly, awareness returning in layers, the unfamiliar bed, the pleasant ache in her body, the empty space beside her. She reached out, finding the sheets still warm. Duke hadn't been gone long. Last night rushed back in vivid detail, their bodies moving together, the intensity in Duke's eyes, the way he'd held her afterward as if she might disappear. The vulnerability of it all struck her now in the cold light of day, bringing with it a flutter of panic. What had she done? Jumped straight from one relationship into another, without taking time to find herself, to figure out who she was without a man to define her? The bedroom door opened, and Duke appeared, holding 2 mugs of coffee. His hair was damp from a shower, a towel slung low around his hips. The sight of him, all lean muscle and sleep-warm skin, momentarily silenced her doubts.
Morning.
His smile was tentative, a little shy, at odds with his confident appearance. Thought you might need this. Valentina sat up, clutching the sheet to her chest as she accepted the mug. Thanks. Duke perched on the edge of the bed, watching her over the rim of his coffee. Sleep okay? Yeah. She took a sip, grateful for the caffeine. You, best in years. His smile deepened. Having you here? He trailed off, but his meaning was clear. Having her beside him had brought him peace. The knowledge should have warmed her. Instead, it felt like pressure, like expectations she wasn't sure she could meet. Duke, she started, then stopped, unsure how to continue. His expression shifted, sensing her unease. What's wrong? Nothing. Everything. She set her mug aside. I think maybe we moved too fast. The words hung between them, ugly in their honesty. Duke's face didn't change, but she saw the shutters come down in his eyes. I see. He stood, putting distance between them. You regret last night. No. The denial was instant, truthful. Not regret. I don't know if I'm ready for what this means. And what does it mean, Valentine? A hint of anger colored his voice. What exactly are you afraid I'm expecting from you? The question was fair. What was she afraid of? That he'd try to control her, like James had? That he'd expect her to become someone she wasn't? I don't know who I am anymore, she admitted finally. I spent 10 years being someone else. James's wife. The perfect hostess. The society woman. Now I'm none of those things, and I'm still trying to figure out what's left. Duke's expression softened slightly. And you think being with me will get in the way of that? Maybe. The honesty cost her, but she owed him that much. I'm scared of losing myself in someone else again. Duke was quiet for a long moment, processing her words. When he spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. I'm not James, Valentine. I don't want to change you or control you. He ran a hand through his damp hair. Christ, the last thing I want is for you to be anyone other than exactly who you are. I know that. Rationally, I know that. She clutched the sheet tighter. But the fear doesn't listen to reason. So, what do you want to do? Pretend last night never happened. The hurt beneath his anger was palpable. Valentina flinched.
No.
I don't regret last night. She met his eyes. But I need space. Time to figure things out. Duke nodded slowly, his expression closing off.
Space.
Sure. Duke. No, I get it. He turned away, grabbing clothes from his dresser. You need time. Take all you need. The chill in his voice cut deeper than anger would have. Valentina watched as he disappeared into the bathroom, emerging minutes later fully dressed, his face a careful mask. I'll make breakfast, he said, already heading for the door. Duke, please. She stopped him with her voice. Don't shut me out.
Talk to me.
He paused, back to her. What do you want me to say, Valentine? That it's fine? That I understand. He laughed, the sound bitter. I don't understand. I thought last night meant something. It did. She fought the urge to go to him, aware of her nakedness under the sheet. It meant everything. That's what scares me. He turned then, his eyes searching hers. What are you so afraid of? Really? The question pierced straight to her core. What was she afraid of? Not Duke himself. Not even the intensity of her feelings for him. Of disappearing, she whispered. Of losing myself in you. In us. Understanding dawned in his eyes. Like you did with him. Yes. Duke crossed back to the bed, sitting beside her. Valentine, the last thing I want is for you to disappear. I want you, the real you in my life. However that looks. Whatever shape it takes. Even if that means taking things slow? Even if it means I need my own space for a while. His hand found hers on the sheet. Even then, relief washed through her, followed quickly by guilt. Here she was, pushing him away after everything they'd shared, and still he was trying to understand, to give her what she needed. I don't deserve you, she said quietly. Probably not. His smile took the sting from the words. But you've got me anyway. The tension between them eased slightly. Duke squeezed her hand, then stood. I'll give you some privacy to get dressed. Breakfast in 15. Valentina nodded, grateful for the reprieve. After he left, she sat motionless for several minutes, trying to untangle the knot of emotions in her chest. Why was she sabotaging this? Why, when she finally had what she'd secretly wanted for years, was she running scared? Because it was real. Because it mattered. Because Duke wasn't a consolation prize or a convenient escape. He was the real thing, and that terrified her more than anything. In the bathroom, she stared at her reflection as she dressed in yesterday's clothes. Who was this woman looking back at her? Not Valentina Porter, society wife. Not quite Valentine Ross, the wild girl from Riverdale, either. Someone new. Someone still forming. Someone who needed to stand on her own before she could truly give herself to another relationship. In the kitchen, Duke had made eggs and toast, his back to her as she entered. The domesticity of the scene made her heart ache. This could be their life. Mornings together, casual intimacy, the comfortable rhythm of two people who fit. But not yet. Not until she knew who she was without a man to define her. Smells good, she said, announcing her presence. Duke turned, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Hope you're hungry. They ate in awkward silence. The ease of last night evaporated in the cold light of day. When they finished, Valentina gathered her courage. I think I should move back to my trailer, she said. At least for now. Duke's jaw tightened, but he nodded. If that's what you want, it's what I need. Need and want aren't always the same thing. He met her eyes across the table. What do you want, Valentine? The question was a lifeline, an opportunity to take back her earlier words, to say she wanted him, wanted this life they could build together. But the fear was stronger. I want to figure out who I am now. And I can't do that here with you. The words came out harsher than she intended. Duke flinched almost imperceptibly, then nodded again. All right. He stood, gathering their plates. I'll take you home after we clean up. I can walk. It's not far. I'll take you. His tone brooked no argument. It's the least I can do. The drive to her trailer was silent, heavy with things unsaid. Duke pulled up outside, killing the engine but making no move to get out. Thank you, Valentina said, hand on the door handle. For understanding. I don't understand. Duke's voice was quiet. But I respect your choice. The honesty in his words made her pause. I'm not running away again, Duke. I'm just pressing pause. Until I figure some things out. And if you figure out you don't want me in your life after all? The vulnerability in the question caught her off guard. That won't happen. You can't know that. His fingers tightened on the steering wheel. You might decide Riverdale isn't enough for you. That I'm not enough. Or I might decide that you're exactly what I want. She touched his arm lightly. But I need to know that choice comes from strength, not fear or convenience. Duke absorbed her words, then nodded slowly. Fair enough. We can still see each other, she offered. Just not like last night. Not yet. Friends.
His smile was wry.
After everything? Maybe not friends exactly. Valentina struggled to define what they were, what they could be. But not strangers either. We were never strangers, Valentine. Duke finally looked at her, his eyes reflecting emotions too complex to name. Even when you were gone, even when I hated you for leaving, you were never a stranger to me. The simple truth of it struck her deeply. I know. You weren't a stranger to me either. Even when I pretended you were. She leaned across the console, pressing a gentle kiss to his cheek. Duke closed his eyes briefly at the contact. Take all the time you need, he said as she pulled back. I'm not going anywhere. The promise hung between them as Valentina got out of the truck, gathering what little she had. At her trailer door, she turned to wave, watching as Duke drove away, his truck disappearing around the bend in the road. Inside, the trailer felt smaller than she remembered, emptier, colder. But it was hers. A space to think, to breathe, to figure out who Valentine Ross, not Porter Ross, was after all these years. Her phone buzzed with a text.
Duke.
Asterisk if you need anything, call. Day or night. Asterisk. Simple words. No pressure, no guilt. Just an offer of support, regardless of her decision to step back. Valentina's throat tightened. How had she gotten so lucky, finding a man who respected her choices even when they hurt him? Who saw her need for independence not as a rejection, but as a necessary step in her journey? She texted back. Asterisk thank you. For everything. Asterisk. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again.
Finally, always.
A single word that contained multitudes. Always had her back. Always respected her choices. Always waited, if that's what she needed. Always loved her, even when she couldn't love herself. Valentina set the phone down, wrapping her arms around herself in the empty trailer. For the first time since leaving Duke's bed that morning, she wondered if she was making a mistake. If the fear driving her was protecting her from harm or preventing her from healing. But the decision was made. She needed this time, this space. To learn who she was now, to stand on her own 2 feet. To be sure that if she went back to Duke, it was because she wanted him, not because she needed him. The distinction might seem small, but to Valentina, it meant everything. Chapter 15. 2 weeks passed in a blur of routine. Valentina threw herself into her job at the bookstore, took over the tiny community garden plot behind her trailer, and slowly, deliberately, built a life that was entirely hers. She saw Duke occasionally, at Rosie's, at the grocery store, once at Ruby's when she went for drinks with Patty and Sandy. Each time, he was polite, distant, respecting the boundaries she'd set. Each time, it took everything in her not to cross the distance between them, to tell him she'd made a mistake. But she hadn't. The time alone was clarifying, necessary. For perhaps the first time in her adult life, Valentina was making choices based solely on what she wanted, not what someone else expected. She started writing again, borrowing Sandy's ancient Yamaha to practice the skills Duke had taught her. The freedom of the open road, the control of guiding the machine herself, it centered her, gave her a sense of capability she'd been missing. You're getting pretty good, Sandy commented one afternoon, watching Valentina return from a solo ride. Duke know you're practicing? Don't think so. Valentina removed her helmet, shaking out her hair.
Why?
Sandy shrugged. No reason. Just thought he might like to know you're keeping up with it. Valentina suspected there was more to the question, but let it go. Her relationship, or lack thereof, with Duke was complicated enough without adding other people's opinions. That evening, a text from Patty broke her quiet routine. Asterisk and cease, throwing Duke a birthday party Saturday night. Big bash at the clubhouse. You coming? Asterisk.
Duke's birthday.
She'd forgotten, or perhaps deliberately not remembered. The knowledge that he was celebrating without her sent an unexpected pang through her chest. Wasn't invited, she texted back. The reply was swift. Asterisk, don't need an invitation. Everyone knows you're welcome. Asterisk.
Did they?
Did Duke? After 2 weeks of polite distance, would he even want her there? Not sure it's a good idea, she hedged. 3 dots. Then, asterisk, stop overthinking, Val.
He misses you.
You miss him. Just come. Asterisk. Valentina stared at the message, heart pounding. Was it that simple? Could she just show up and bridge the gap she created between them?
No.
It wasn't fair to Duke, not after how she'd left things. If she won his party, it needed to be with clear intentions. She couldn't keep jerking him back and forth between hope and rejection, which meant she needed to make a decision. About what she wanted. About who she wanted to be. About whether that person had room in her life for Duke Reynolds. Saturday night arrived clear and warm, stars scattered across the early summer sky. Valentina stood in front of her small bathroom mirror, barely recognizing the woman who stared back. Gone was the polished society wife, with her designer clothes and careful makeup. In her place stood someone both new and familiar, hair loose around her shoulders, face barely made up, eyes bright with nervous anticipation. She'd spent hours deciding what to wear, finally settling on what felt most authentically her: ripped jeans, a simple black tank top, and the leather jacket she'd found in a vintage store last week. Not the same as the one Duke had given her all those years ago, but similar enough to feel like a statement. Sandy's Yamaha waited outside, her borrowed helmet hanging from the handlebars. Taking it had been a last-minute decision, a symbolic choice. She'd arrive under her own power, on her own terms. The Riot Kings clubhouse sat on the outskirts of town, a converted warehouse with a large yard now filled with motorcycles and pickup trucks. Music spilled into the night, along with laughter and the mingled scents of barbecue and beer. Valentina parked the Yamaha among the rows of much larger bikes, feeling like a child bringing a tricycle to a motorcycle rally. Still, the act of riding here herself, of not arriving as someone's passenger, steadied her nerves. Inside, the party was in full swing. The warehouse had been transformed with strings of lights, a makeshift bar, and tables laden with food. At one end, a local band played classic rock covers, their sound nearly drowned out by the crowd's chatter. Valentina scanned the room, looking for Duke among the sea of leather cuts and denim. Familiar faces appeared, Axel raising a beer in greeting, Denny winking from his perch near the bar, Sandy waving frantically from across the room. But no Duke. He's outside. Patty materialized beside her, pressing a cold beer into her hand. Near the fire pit. Thanks. Valentina's voice was steadier than she felt. Nice party. Wouldn't miss it. Reynolds only turns 35 once. Patty studied her face. You okay? You look like you might bolt. I'm fine. Just nervous. Don't be. Patty squeezed her arm. He'll be happy you came. Trust me. With Patty's encouragement warming her, Valentina made her way through the crowd toward the back doors. People greeted her as she passed, club members, their wives, locals who knew her from the bookstore or remembered her from before. She belonged here, she realized, had always belonged, even when she'd tried to convince herself otherwise. The night air was cooler outside, the noise of the party muffled. A large fire pit dominated the center of the yard, surrounded by mismatched chairs and logs serving as benches. Several people clustered around it, their faces illuminated by the dancing flames. And there was Duke, seated on a log, nursing a beer, firelight catching on the angles of his face. He looked relaxed, happy, the tension she'd grown accustomed to seeing in his features notably absent. He hadn't noticed her yet. Valentina took a moment to simply watch him, to appreciate the man he'd become. Strong, steady, respected. A man who led by example, who protected what was his, who waited patiently for what he wanted. And what he wanted, she now knew with quiet certainty, was her. The question was, did she want him back? The answer came without hesitation, rising from a place of clarity rather than fear. Yes. She wanted this man, this life, this community. Not because she needed saving or protection, but because she chose it. Chose him. As if sensing her presence, Duke looked up. Their eyes met across the yard, his widening slightly in surprise. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then Duke stood, excusing himself from his companions, and walked toward her with a measured stride that belied the intensity in his gaze. You came, he said simply when he reached her. Happy birthday. Valentina offered a smile, hoping he could read everything she couldn't yet say in it. Sorry I didn't bring a gift. You're here. That's enough. His eyes traced her face, noting the changes, the relaxed set of her shoulders, the confidence in her stance. You look good. Different. I feel different. She gestured to her jacket. Found this last week. Reminded me of the one I gave you, Duke finished. I remember. Of course he did. He remembered everything, her favorite soup, how she took her tea, the jacket he'd given her a lifetime ago. I've been thinking, Valentina said, gathering her courage, these past 2 weeks, about what I want, who I want to be. Duke's expression remained carefully neutral. And I want to be me. Just me. Valentine Ross. She met his eyes steadily. But I also want you. If you still want me. The change in his face was subtle but profound, hope kindling in his eyes, the corner of his mouth lifting in the beginning of a smile. If I still want you, he repeated, incredulous. Valentine, I never stopped wanting you. Not for a single day in 10 years. Relief washed through her. Even after how I left things? After pushing you away? Even then. Duke stepped closer, not quite touching her. You needed time. I respect that. I did need it. She closed the distance between them, resting her hand lightly on his chest. But I don't anymore. Duke covered her hand with his own, his palm warm and calloused against her skin. You sure about that? Because I can't do halfway with you, Valentine. Not again. I'm sure. The certainty in her voice matched the steadiness in her heart. I'm not running anymore, Duke. I'm choosing.
You. Us.
This life. Something broke open in his expression then, joy mingled with disbelief, with a vulnerability she'd rarely seen in him. Duke's hand came up to cup her cheek, thumb tracing her lower lip. Say it again. I choose you, she whispered, leaning into his touch. Not because I need you, but because I want you. Because my life is better with you in it. The admission hung between them, honest and unguarded. Duke's eyes darkened. Can I kiss you now? Or do you need more time to think about it? The teasing note in his voice made her laugh, breaking the last of the tension between them. Valentina answered by rising on tiptoes, pressing her lips to his in a kiss that felt like coming home. Duke's arms wrapped around her waist, lifting her slightly as he deepened the kiss. Somewhere in the background, whistles and cheers erupted, the party guests noticing their reunion, but neither paid any attention. There was only this moment, this man, this second chance they'd both fought so hard to earn. When they finally broke apart, Duke kept her close, forehead pressed to hers. Dance with me? The band inside had started playing a slow song, the melody drifting out to the yard. Valentina nodded, letting him lead her to a clear space near the fire. They swayed together, her cheek against his chest, his arms secure around her. The rightness of it overwhelmed her, not the desperate clinging of a drowning woman, but the steady certainty of two people who had found their way back to each other through time and pain and growth. I bought a bike, she murmured against a shirt. Nothing fancy. Old Sportster from Sandy's brother. Needs work. Duke pulled back slightly to see her face. Yeah? When were you going to tell me?
Tonight.
It's kind of your other birthday present. She smiled up at him. Thought maybe you could help me rebuild it. The significance wasn't lost on him. She was asking for his help, not his rescue. Offering to build something together, not expecting him to do it for her. I'd like that. His voice roughened. Seeing you on that Yamaha when you pulled up, damn, Valentine. Nearly took my breath away. Good. She pressed closer to him, their bodies moving in perfect sync to the music. Because I plan on riding beside you from now on. Not behind you. Duke's laugh vibrated through his chest. Wouldn't have it any other way. As the song ended, he kept hold of her hand, leading her through the yard toward the parking lot. The party continued behind them, but neither looked back. Where are we going? Valentina asked. Somewhere quieter. Duke stopped beside his Harley. Thought we might take a ride. Like old times. But it wouldn't be like old times, she realized. They weren't those people anymore. The reckless boy with something to prove, the girl desperate to escape her small-town life. They were different now. Stronger. Wiser. Better together than apart. I have a better idea. Valentina nodded toward Sandy's Yamaha. Race you to the old quarry. Duke's smile spread slow and wide across his face. You think you can keep up? Only one way to find out. She grabbed her helmet, swinging her leg over the borrowed bike with newfound confidence. Unless you're scared to lose to a girl. The challenge sparked something familiar in his eyes. Not control or possession, but partnership. Respect. And beneath it all, a love that had weathered separation, pain, and rediscovery. Never. Duke mounted his own bike, kickstarting it with practiced ease. But don't expect me to go easy on you just because I love you. The words, spoken so casually, so naturally, stole her breath. Valentina stared at him, heart pounding in her chest. "What did you say?" she asked, voice barely audible over the rumble of their engines. Duke looked surprised, as if he hadn't realized what had slipped out. Then his expression softened, a smile touching his lips. "I said I love you, Valentine Ross." He revved his engine. "Always have. Always will." Before she could respond, he took off, his bike roaring down the road. Valentina laughed, the sound wild and free in the night air, and gave chase. She'd tell him she loved him too when she caught up. And she would catch up, maybe not tonight, maybe not tomorrow, but someday soon. They had time now. All the time in the world. As they raced through the darkness, two bikes side by side rather than one carrying both, Valentina felt the last pieces of her old life fall away. Ahead lay uncertainty, challenge, the messy reality of building something real with a man who knew all her flaws and loved her anyway. She wouldn't have it any other way. Chapter 16. Sunlight streamed through the open garage door as Valentina passed Duke a wrench. She sat cross-legged on a clean shop towel, watching as he bent over her Sportster's engine. "Hand me the 10mm socket," he said, not looking up from his work. Valentina glanced at the assortment of tools spread before her, selecting the right one with growing confidence. 2 weeks into rebuilding her bike, and she was learning fast. "So the previous owner really never changed the oil?" she asked, leaning closer to see what Duke was doing. "Not from the look of it." Duke grimaced, hands black with grime. "Criminal, treating a bike this way." Valentina smiled at his outrage. Duke treated motorcycles like living things, deserving of care and respect. It was one of the many things she'd rediscovered about him in the months since his birthday party, since they'd decided to truly give their relationship another chance. "Good thing she has us now," she said, resting her hand briefly on the scratched gas tank. "We'll take care of her." Duke glanced up, a smile crinkling the corners of his eyes. "That we will." The simple domesticity of the moment warmed her. This was what building something looked like: greasy hands, shared knowledge, the satisfaction of restoration. So different from her marriage to James, where everything had been outsourced, where appearances had mattered more than substance. "What are you thinking about?" Duke asked, straightening to wipe his hands on a rag. "You've got that look." "What look?" "The one where you're comparing now to then." He tapped her forehead gently. "I can see the wheels turning." Valentina laughed. "That obvious, huh? To me?"
Yeah.
Duke leaned against the workbench. "So, what's the verdict? How does rebuilding a junker in a greasy garage compare to your old life?" "No contest." She stood, stepping into his space. "This wins by a mile." Duke's arms came around her waist, heedless of the grease. "Even without the mansion and the fancy cars?" "Especially without those." Valentina looped her arms around his neck. "Turns out I prefer motorcycles and men who know how to use a wrench." His laugh rumbled through his chest as he lowered his head to kiss her. Valentina melted into it, still marveling at the ease between them, at how quickly they'd found their rhythm. The sound of a throat clearing broke them apart. Axel stood in the doorway, amusement written across his face. "Sorry to interrupt the romance, but we've got a customer waiting on an estimate, boss." Duke sighed, pressing his forehead briefly against Valentina's. "Duty calls." "Go." She pushed him playfully toward the door. "I'll clean up here." After he left, Valentina gathered the tools, putting each back in its proper place in the toolbox Duke had given her. Her own tools for her own bike. A small thing, perhaps, but it symbolized something bigger. Independence within partnership, the building of a life that was truly shared rather than controlled. Later that evening, Valentina locked up the bookstore after the last customer left. She'd kept the job even after things with James were resolved, finding unexpected joy in recommending books, in the quiet hours surrounded by stories. Headlights swept across the window as a familiar truck pulled up outside. Duke right on time. He'd been picking her up after closing for the past week, a routine they'd fallen into without discussion. "Hey," he greeted as she locked the door behind her. "Good day?" Not bad." She slid into the passenger seat, leaning across the console to kiss him hello. "Sold Mrs. Winters another bodice ripper. Pretty sure she's single-handedly keeping the romance section profitable." Duke laughed as he pulled away from the curb. "That woman's been terrorizing this town with her inappropriate comments since I was a kid. Nice to know some things never change." Speaking of change, Valentina hesitated, then plunged ahead. "I was thinking about my trailer." Duke's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. "What about it?" "It's served its purpose. Help me figure out who I am, what I want." She turned to face him more fully. "But it's still a tetanus shot waiting to happen, as someone once told me." A cautious smile touched Duke's lips. "I seem to recall saying something like that." "You were right." Valentina reached for his hand. "So, I was thinking, maybe it's time for something different." Duke pulled the truck into the parking lot of his garage, killing the engine but making no move to get out. "Different how?" The nervousness in his voice made her realize he was misunderstanding. "Not leaving Riverdale different. Just living arrangement different." Hope flickered in his eyes. "You saying what I think you're saying, Valentine? If you think I'm saying I'd like to move in with you, then yes." She squeezed his hand. "If the offer still stands." Duke's answering smile was blinding. The offer never expired. Relief and joy bubbled through her. "Are you sure? I know I've been inconsistent. I wouldn't blame you for being hesitant." "Valentine," Duke turned in his seat to face her fully, "I've waited 10 years for you. A few more months of you figuring things out? Small price to pay." The simple acceptance in his words, the patience, it humbled her. James would have lorded her hesitation over her, made her feel guilty for her independence. Duke just waited, understanding that her journey was necessary. "I don't deserve you," she whispered. "Probably not," he agreed, echoing his words from weeks before. "But you've got me anyway. For as long as you want me. That might be a very long time." "I'm counting on it." Duke leaned across the console, capturing her lips in a kiss that spoke of promises, of futures, of shared tomorrows. When they broke apart, both breathing heavily, Duke rested his forehead against hers. "When do you want to move in? Is tomorrow too soon?" Valentina laughed at his surprised expression. "I don't have much. Won't take long to pack. Tomorrow works." Duke kissed her again, quickly. "I'll help." They got out of the truck, heading toward the darkened garage. Valentina had left some tools there that she wanted to organize before tomorrow. Inside, the familiar smells of oil and metal greeted them. Duke flipped on a single light, casting the office in shadows. Valentina moved toward the workbench, but Duke caught her around the waist, pulling her back against his chest. "You know," he murmured against her ear, "I've had fantasies about you in this garage." Heat pooled low in her belly at his words, at the feel of his solid warmth against her back. "Is that so?"
Mom.
His lips found the sensitive spot below her ear. "Since high school. You bent over one of the bikes, wearing those cutoffs you used to torture me with." Valentina laughed, the sound turning to a gasp as his hands slid beneath her shirt. "Quite the imagination, Reynolds. Want to hear more?" His voice was a rumble against her skin. "Or better yet, want me to show you?" She turned in his arms, her own desire rising to match his. "Show me." What followed was nothing like their first night together. No hesitation, no ghosts between them. Instead, there was laughter as belt buckles proved stubborn, as the desk chair nearly toppled, as they rediscovered the joyful, playful side of desire. And afterward, as they lay tangled together on the office couch, Valentina realized something. For the first time in longer than she could remember, she was simply, completely happy. Not perfect, not without challenges ahead, but fundamentally right. This was what building something looked like. Not the polished facade of her marriage, but the messy, authentic reality of two people choosing each other every day. Grease-stained hands. Shared tools. Late-night laughter in an office after hours. It wasn't the life she'd imagined at 20, when she'd left Riverdale chasing bigger dreams. It wasn't the life she'd built with James, all surface shine and hollow center. It was better.
Real. Hers.
Theirs. Chapter 17. Moving in with Duke proved easier than Valentina had expected. Her sparse possessions filled a single corner of his closet, her few books finding homes on his shelves. Within days, it felt as if she'd always been there, coffee mugs side by side in the cabinet, her shampoo next to his in the shower, 2 toothbrushes in the bathroom cup. Small details, but they filled her with a quiet contentment she'd never known before. This was belonging, not possession.
Partnership, not ownership.
What do you think? Duke stood in the doorway of his, bedroom, watching as she arranged the last of her clothes. Everything fit okay? Perfect. Valentina smiled, closing the drawer. I travel light these days. Notice that. He crossed to sit beside her on the bed. Far cry from the woman who needed 3 suitcases for a weekend trip to the lake back in high school. The memory made her laugh. God, I was ridiculous. What did I even pack? 4 swimsuits, if I recall. Duke's smile turned wicked. Though you only wore the red one. For about 5 minutes before I took it off you. Heat rushed to her cheeks. Axel's parents' cabin. I'd forgotten about that weekend. I haven't. Duke tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Memories like that got me through some dark times after you left. The easy reference to their past, both the joy and the pain, still amazed her. They'd learned to speak of it without accusation, to acknowledge what was lost without letting it poison what they'd found again. Well, she said, leaning into his touch, now we can make new memories. Duke's response was cut short by the ringing of her phone. Valentina glanced at the screen, then froze. Melanie. Her sister. Who is it? Duke asked, noting her expression. My sister. Valentina stared at the phone as if it might bite. I haven't spoken to her since I left. Duke squeezed her shoulder. You don't have to answer. But she did. Whatever Melanie wanted, avoiding it wouldn't make it go away. Valentina took a deep breath and swiped to accept the call. Hello, Melanie. Val. Her sister's voice sounded strange, strained, nasal, as if she'd been crying. I didn't think you'd answer. Almost didn't. Valentina kept her tone neutral. What do you want? A beat of silence. It's Mom.
She's sick.
Really sick. Cold washed through Valentina's chest. Her relationship with her mother had been strained for years, especially after she'd sided with James during the separation. But still, what's wrong with her?
Cancer.
Pancreatic. Melanie's voice cracked. They've given her a month, maybe 2. She's asking for you. Valentina closed her eyes, processing. Her mother, dying. Asking for her. After years of criticism, of subtle jabs about how Valentina wasn't good enough, wasn't sophisticated enough, wasn't the daughter she'd wanted. Val, are you there? I'm here. Valentina opened her eyes to find Duke watching her with concern. When was she diagnosed? 3 weeks ago. It's aggressive, moving fast. Melanie sounded exhausted. I know things are complicated between us, but she's our mother, Val. She needs you.
Did she?
Or was this another manipulation, another attempt to pull Valentina back into the toxic dynamics she'd escaped? I'll think about it, she said finally. Val, please. I said I'll think about it, Melanie. Valentina's voice hardened. I need to process this. Fine. Melanie sighed. Just don't wait too long. She doesn't have much time. After hanging up, Valentina sat motionless, emotions warring within her. Duke waited silently, giving her space to sort through her thoughts. My mother's dying, she said finally. Pancreatic cancer. Melanie says she's asking for me. Duke nodded, his expression carefully neutral. What do you want to do? I don't know. Valentina stood, restless energy propelling her to the window. Part of me says I owe her nothing. She always took James's side, always made me feel like I wasn't enough. And the other part? The other part says she's still my mother. Valentina pressed her forehead against the cool glass. That I'll regret it if I don't go. That I'll always wonder what she wanted to say. Duke was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was gentle. "Can I tell you something? Something I've never told anyone." Valentina turned to face him. "Of course. When my mom was dying, we weren't on good terms." Duke's eyes grew distant with memory. She'd relapsed, was drinking again. "I was angry, felt betrayed. Stopped visiting." He paused, gathering himself. "By the time I got over my pride, it was too late. She was gone, and I never got to say goodbye. Never got to tell her I forgave her, that I understood she was fighting demons I couldn't see." The pain in his voice was raw. Even years later, Valentina crossed to him, taking his hands in hers. "I'm sorry. Don't be." Duke squeezed her fingers. "I'm telling you this not to make you feel bad, but because I don't want you to carry the same regret. Whatever your mother did, whatever pain she caused, once she's gone, the chance for closure goes with her." The wisdom in his words penetrated her defenses. Duke, who rarely spoke of his past, was sharing something deeply personal to help her make this decision. "You think I should go? I think you should decide for yourself." Duke touched her cheek gently. "But I think the Valentine Ross I know is strong enough to face her past, to make peace with it, so she can move forward." The faith in his eyes humbled her. James had always encouraged her to avoid conflict, to keep the peace at any cost, even if it meant burying her true feelings. Duke believed she was strong enough to face difficult truths head-on. "What about us?" she asked, a new worry surfacing. "Going back to California won't change us." Duke's certainty steadied her. "This isn't like before, Valentine. We're different now. Stronger." "I'd have to see James." The thought sent an unpleasant shiver through her. "He and my mother were always close." "You can handle James." Duke's confidence in her was unwavering. "You already did, remember? At Rosie's." Valentina nodded slowly, drawing strength from his belief in her. "Will you come with me?" Duke hesitated, clearly surprised by the request. "If that's what you want. But are you sure?" Was she? The question made her pause, examining her motivations. Did she want Duke there as a shield, a protector? Or as a partner, sharing this difficult journey? "I want you there," she said finally. "Not because I need you to fight my battles, but because I'd be stronger with you beside me." The distinction was important. Duke seemed to understand, his expression softening. "Then I'll be there." He pulled her into his arms. "Whatever you need, however you need it." Valentina rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Not just of seeing my mother like that, but of being pulled back into who I used to be around them." "That won't happen."
Duke's certainty was a bomb.
"The woman you are now, she's too strong to disappear again." The woman she was now. Independent but not isolated. Strong but not brittle. Capable of vulnerability, without surrendering her power. "When should we go?"
Duke asked.
Valentina took a deep breath, decision made. "Tomorrow. Before I lose my nerve." Later, as she called Melanie back to make arrangements, Valentina felt a strange calmness settle over her. This journey would be difficult, painful even, but necessary. Another step in reclaiming her life, in healing old wounds so they couldn't continue to shape her future. And this time, unlike when she'd left Riverdale all those years ago, she wouldn't be facing the unknown alone. Duke would be beside her, not leading, not controlling, but supporting. Partners in the truest sense. That night, as they lay together in the darkness, Duke's arms around her, Valentina whispered, "Thank you." "For what?" "For showing me what real strength looks like." She pressed closer to him. "For believing I have it in me, even when I don't." Duke's lips found her temple. "You've always had it, Valentine. You just needed to remember." As sleep claimed her, Valentina held tight to that belief. Whatever waited for her in California, whatever ghosts from her past she needed to face, she would meet them head-on. Not perfect, not fearless, but genuine. The woman she'd always been meant to be. Chapter 18. The California sun felt different from how Valentina remembered, harsher, more glaring, lacking the soft edges of Riverdale's morning light. Or maybe it was just her perception that had changed. colored by all that had happened since she'd left. "Nice place," Duke commented as they pulled up to her mother's Spanish-style home in Palm Desert. "Your mom live here long?" "Since the divorce." Valentina stared at the manicured lawn, the carefully tended bougainvillea. "Dad paid for it. Guilt money, she always called it, though she never refused to spend it." Duke squeezed her hand before killing the engine of their rental car. "Ready?" "Not really, but it was too late to turn back now." Valentina nodded, squaring her shoulders as they approached the front door. Melanie answered on the first knock. Her sister looked thinner than Valentina remembered, dark circles shadowing her eyes. For a moment, they simply stared at each other, the betrayal between them a physical presence. "You came." Melanie's voice cracked slightly. "I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't." Valentina felt Duke's solid presence behind her, drawing strength from it. "How is she?" "Hanging in there. Better today than yesterday." Melanie's eyes flickered to Duke, obvious questions in her expression. "This is Duke," Valentina said simply. "Duke, my sister Melanie." If Melanie was surprised by Duke's appearance, the tattoos visible beneath his sleeves, the quiet intensity of his gaze, she hid it well. "Nice to meet you. Come in, both of you." The interior was cool and dim, smelling faintly of antiseptic and the lilies her mother had always preferred. A hospital bed had been set up in the living room, medical equipment clustered around it like mechanical sentinels. And there, diminished against the white sheets, lay Eleanor Ross, the woman who had shaped so much of Valentina's life, her insecurities, her desperate desire to escape Riverdale, her need for approval. Looked shockingly small, skin stretched taut over sharp cheekbones. "Mom." Valentina approached the bed cautiously. "It's me, Valentine." Her mother's eyes fluttered open, still that piercing blue, even as the rest of her faded. "You came." Her voice was a whisper, so unlike the commanding tone Valentina remembered. "I didn't think you would." "I almost didn't." Honesty seemed the only possible approach. "But I'm here now." Eleanor's gaze shifted beyond her, landing on Duke. A flicker of recognition passed across her features. The Reynolds boy. After all these years. Duke stepped forward, his hand finding the small of Valentina's back. "Mrs. Ross. So you found your way back to each other." Eleanor's laugh turned into a racking cough. Melanie hurried to help her sip water. "Life is full of circles, I suppose." The irony wasn't lost on Valentina. Her mother, who had encouraged her to leave Duke, to leave Riverdale, to reach for something better, now witnessing their reunion. "Duke, Mel, could I have a moment alone with Mom?" Valentina asked. After they left, she pulled a chair close to the bed. "Melanie said you wanted to see me." Eleanor's thin hand reached for hers. After a moment's hesitation, Valentina took it, surprised by the bird-like delicacy of bones she'd once thought unbreakable. "I'm dying, Valentine." No preamble, no softening. Typical Eleanor. "I don't have time for niceties." "I know. What you don't know is that I'm sorry." Eleanor's eyes, clear despite the morphine, held Valentina's. "For so much. For pushing you to be someone you weren't. For making you feel like Riverdale, like who you really were, wasn't enough." The words, so unexpected, left Valentina speechless. In all her imaginings of this meeting, an apology had never figured. "Why," she managed finally. "Why did you push so hard?" "Because I was afraid." Eleanor's fingers tightened weakly around hers. "Afraid you'd end up like me, trapped in a small town, dreams gathering dust. I wanted more for you. I never felt trapped in Riverdale." The realization came as she spoke it. "Not until you made me believe I should." Eleanor nodded, a tear slipping down her hollow cheek. "I know that now. Too late, as these things often are." The bitterness in her voice stirred something unexpected in Valentina, compassion. Her mother, for all her faults, had wanted to protect her from what she perceived as a limited life. "It wasn't all bad advice," Valentina conceded. "I needed to leave, to see more of the world than just Riverdale. I just went about it the wrong way." "By marrying James." Eleanor's mouth twisted. Another mistake I encouraged. The mention of her ex-husband brought a new tension to Valentina's shoulders. Has he been here?
Yes.
Several times. Eleanor's eyes showed a clarity that surprised Valentina. I sent him away. Told him he wasn't welcome after what he did to you. The unexpected loyalty, coming so late, brought tears to Valentina's eyes. I thought that I'd take his side? I did, at first. Eleanor sighed. Easier to believe my daughter overreacted than to admit I'd encouraged her to marry a monster in an expensive suit. Valentina absorbed this, the knowledge that her mother had ultimately chosen her shifting something long broken inside her chest. I'm sorry too, she said finally, for shutting you out, for not telling you how I really felt all those years. We're more alike than either of us wanted to admit. Eleanor's smile was wry despite her weakness. Both too proud, too stubborn to bend. They talked for nearly an hour, really talked perhaps for the first time in their adult relationship. About Valentina's marriage, about Eleanor's regrets, about the walls they'd both built that had kept them apart. Not everything was resolved. Some hurts ran too deep for a deathbed reconciliation to fully heal. But something shifted between them, a heaviness lifting that Valentina hadn't realized she'd been carrying. The Reynolds boy, Eleanor said as Valentina prepared to let her rest. You love him? I do. No hesitation now, no shame in admitting it. Always have. And he loves you. Yes. Eleanor nodded, eyes drifting closed with fatigue. Good. That's good. Be happy, Valentine. Not the way I thought you should be. The way you are. The simple blessing, coming from a woman who had spent years trying to reshape her, brought fresh tears to Valentina's eyes. I will, Mom. I promise. As she left the room, Duke stood from where he'd been waiting in the hallway. One look at her face, and he opened his arms. Valentina walked into them, letting his warmth envelop her as the tears came in earnest. That bad, he murmured against her hair. No. She shook her head against his chest. That healing. They stayed for 2 weeks. Longer than planned, but necessary as Eleanor faded more rapidly than expected. Valentina spent hours at her bedside, sometimes talking, sometimes just holding her hand in silence. Duke proved an unexpected source of comfort to all of them, fixing things around the house Eleanor had let slide, making sure Valentina and Melanie ate, providing quiet strength when emotions ran high. Melanie, too, showed sides Valentina hadn't seen before. Competence in managing their mother's care, vulnerability in late-night conversations after Eleanor slept, even hesitant attempts at rebuilding their shattered relationship. I'm sorry, she said one night, the two of them sharing wine on the back patio while Duke handled a call from Axel inside. For James. For everything. Why did you do it? The question Valentina had carried for months finally emerged, not in anger, but in genuine need to understand. Melanie stared into her glass. Because I was jealous. Because you had everything, the perfect husband, the perfect life, and I wanted to prove it wasn't so perfect after all. It wasn't perfect. Far from it. I know that now. Melanie's eyes, so like their mother's, met hers. Does that make it worse? That I hurt you for nothing? Valentina considered this.
No.
It makes you human. Flawed, like all of us. Not forgiveness, exactly. That would take more time, more healing. But understanding, the beginning of a bridge across the chasm between them. On their final morning, with Eleanor's body already taken to the funeral home, Valentina stood in her mother's bedroom, looking at the collection of framed photos on the dresser. Her graduation. Her wedding. Family pictures from better times. And there, tucked behind the others, a photo she'd never seen before, herself at 18, in that ridiculous embroidered leather jacket Duke had given her, laughing at something off-camera.
Happy.
Authentic.
Free.
Her mother had kept it all these years. Had looked at this version of her daughter, even while pushing her to become someone else entirely. Find what you're looking for? Duke asked from the doorway. Valentina held up the photo. In a way. Duke crossed to look over her shoulder, a smile touching his lips. God, that jacket was ugly. It was perfect. Valentina leaned back against him. Think we can swing by storage before we leave? There's something there I want to take home. Duke's arms came around her waist. Home, he repeated, the word warm with meaning. You ready to go back? Valentina turned in his embrace, looking up into the face of the man who had always seen her, truly seen her, even when she couldn't see herself. Yes, she said simply. I'm ready to go home. Home to Riverdale. Home to the garage and her half-rebuilt Sportster. Home to the life they were building together. Not perfect, not without challenges, but honest in a way her California existence had never been. As they drove away from Palm Desert, Valentina watched the landscape change through the window, desert giving way to mountains, then forests as they headed north. With each mile, she felt lighter, the burdens of her past, not gone, but transformed, integrated into who she was becoming. She'd come to California expecting pain, confrontation, perhaps more loss. Instead, she'd found unexpected healing, fragile new beginnings, and the final release of who she'd tried to be for so long. Valentine Ross was going home, not running away, not escaping, but choosing. And that made all the difference. Chapter 19. Pass me that socket wrench, Valentina said, hand extended without looking up from the Sportster's engine. Duke obliged, watching as she tightened a bolt with practiced ease. 3 months after returning from California, and she'd transformed, not just in her growing mechanical skills, but in something more fundamental. A confidence, a centeredness, as if she'd finally settled into her own skin. Getting good at that, he commented, leaning against the workbench. Couple more weeks, you won't need me at all. Valentina glanced up, a smudge of grease on her cheek. Maybe that's the point, to not need you. Her smile softened the words. But I'll always want you around. The distinction meant everything. Duke had watched her rebuild herself alongside the motorcycle. Parts removed, examined, some replaced, others restored, all coming together into something both familiar and entirely new. How's it feeling? Think she'll be ready for the rally next weekend? Duke nodded toward the nearly completed bike, its once dull paint now gleaming black with subtle metallic flecks. Almost. Valentina straightened, wiping her hands on a shop rag. Just need to finish the exhaust system, then a test ride to make sure everything's dialed in. Pride swelled in Duke's chest, watching her expertise grow, her confidence solidify. This was a Valentine he'd never fully known before, neither the wild teenager desperate to escape her small town, nor the polished society wife afraid of her own shadow. This was someone new, someone who had integrated all her past selves into something stronger, more complete. What? She asked, catching his expression. Nothing.
Duke shook his head.
Just thinking how good you look covered in grease, talking about exhaust systems. She laughed, the sound free and easy. Never thought I'd be here, that's for sure. The old Valentine would have died rather than get her hands dirty. The old Valentine had her charms too. Duke pulled her close, heedless of the grease on her fingers. But this one's unstoppable. Flatterer. She kissed him quickly, then wiggled free. Don't distract me. I want to finish this today. The bell over the garage door jingled, announcing a customer. Duke reluctantly pulled away, heading to the front while Valentina returned to her work. When he came back 20 minutes later, she was standing back, admiring the completed exhaust system. The bike looked better than new, not just mechanically sound, but personalized in subtle ways that reflected its owner. Custom handlebars, slightly lower suspension for her height, that special black paint that seemed to shift colors in different light. Looks like we have a verdict, Duke announced. She's officially roadworthy. Passed inspection with flying colors. Valentina's eyes lit up. Really? It's done. 100% street legal. Duke held out the registration papers. All in your name, just like we discussed. She took the papers reverently, staring at her name printed at the top. I can't believe it. All those months of work, worth every minute.
Duke gestured to the bike.
Want to take her for a spin? See how she feels on the open road. Valentina bit her lip, sudden uncertainty crossing her features. What if something goes wrong? What if I mess something up? Then we fix it. Duke squeezed her shoulder. That's the beauty of bikes, Valentine. Nothing's permanent. Everything can be rebuilt. The metaphor wasn't lost on her. Valentina nodded, determination replacing doubt. Let me get my gear. 10 minutes later, they stood in the parking lot, Valentina in the leather jacket they'd retrieved from storage in California, the one with the roses embroidered on the back, ridiculously out of style but perfect in its symbolism. Duke had his own bike ready beside hers, but made no move to mount it. This first ride is all yours, he said.
Solo.
You built it, you get to feel it first with no distractions. Surprise and gratitude flickered across her face. You sure? Positive.
Duke stepped back.
Go on. Just around the block first, get a feel for how she handles. Valentina took a deep breath, swung her leg over the bike, and started the engine. The roar was deeper, richer than before, a sound they'd fine-tuned together over weeks of adjustments. She grinned at the vibration between her legs, the power thrumming through the machine. See you in a few, she called, and then she was gone, the bike moving smoothly onto the street, picking up speed as she navigated the first corner. Duke watched until she disappeared from view, pride and something deeper warming his chest. This was what love looked like, he realized. Not possession, not control, but this, giving someone the space to find themselves, to grow into who they were meant to be, even if it meant watching them ride away. Knowing they'd come back not because they had to, but because they chose to. 15 minutes later, the distinctive rumble of her Sportster announced Valentina's return. She pulled into the lot, face flushed with exhilaration beneath her helmet. The smile she gave Duke as she cut the engine was radiant. Well, he asked, though her expression told him everything. Perfect. She pulled off her helmet, hair tumbling free. Absolutely perfect. Better than I imagined. No adjustments needed? Valentina considered this head tilted. The clutch feels a little tight, and I think the front brake could use a slight tweak. But otherwise. She patted the gas tank affectionately. She's exactly what I wanted.
Good.
Duke smiled. That's what matters. Your ride, your rules. The phrase struck Valentina, something shifting in her expression. My ride, my rules, she repeated softly. I like that. That evening, as they closed up the garage, Valentina lingered beside her bike, running her hand along the smooth curve of the fender. You know, she said thoughtfully, when I first came back to Riverdale, I felt like I had nothing. No identity, no purpose, just running from what went wrong. Duke leaned against the workbench, giving her space to find the words. Then you taught me to ride, she continued. And something clicked. For the first time in years, I felt in control. Capable. You always were, Duke said quietly. You just forgot for a while. Maybe. Valentina looked up, meeting his eyes. Or maybe I needed to learn it all over again, from scratch. To build something with my own hands, make my own decisions. My ride, my rules. And now? Duke asked, the question encompassing far more than just the motorcycle. Now I know who I am. Valentina crossed to him, confidence in every step. Not just your girlfriend, not just the woman who left James Porter.
Me.
Valentine Ross. Bookstore clerk, amateur mechanic, Riverdale girl who went away and came back stronger. Duke's hands found her waist, drawing her closer. Don't forget stubborn pain in my ass. She laughed, the sound echoing in the empty garage. That too. Her expression softened. Thank you. For giving me space to figure it out. For not trying to fix me. Nothing to fix. Duke's voice roughened. Just parts that needed a little restoration, that's all. Valentina rose on tiptoes, pressing her lips to his in a kiss that held promise, passion, and most of all, certainty. When they broke apart, she stayed close, forehead resting against his. Take me for a ride? She asked.
Now. Now.
She glanced toward their bikes, side by side in the garage, his larger Harley, her sleek Sportster. Not behind you this time. Beside you. Duke understood what she was asking, not just a ride, but a symbol of how far they'd come, of the partnership they'd built. Always. He kissed her again, briefly. Just try to keep up. Valentina's answering grin was pure challenge. Oh, I'll do more than keep up, Reynolds. I might even leave you in my dust. As they rode through the gathering dusk, Valentina beside him rather than behind him, Duke felt something settle into place. This was right. This was how it was always meant to be, two people, side by side, choosing each other every day, neither leading nor following, but moving forward together. Their headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the road ahead. Whatever waited around the next curve, they would face it together, not as halves of a whole, but as two complete people who were stronger side by side. Her ride, her rules. His respect, his love. Their future, unwritten but full of possibility.
As good as it gets.
Chapter 20. The Riot Kings Summer Rally transformed Riverdale for one weekend each year. Motorcycles lined the main street, leather-clad riders from chapters across 3 states filling the bars and restaurants. Music, laughter, and the constant rumble of engines created a soundtrack unlike any other. Valentina stood in front of the full-length mirror in their bedroom, barely recognizing the woman who looked back. Faded jeans hugged her curves, tucked into well-worn boots. A simple black tank top showed off arms that had grown stronger from months of mechanical work. And over it all, the leather jacket with roses embroidered on the back, a piece of her past reclaimed, no longer hidden away in shame. You ready for this? Duke appeared in the doorway, his own cut displaying the vice president patch she'd once found intimidating. As I'll ever be. She turned to face him, suddenly nervous. Do I look ridiculous? This jacket is perfect. Duke cut her off, crossing to pull her into his arms. You look like you. Like the Valentine I've always known was in there. The words calmed her. This was who she was, not the polished society wife, not the scared girl who'd run away, but this woman who had found her way back to herself through struggle and choice and love. Then let's ride. She brushed a quick kiss across his lips before pulling away. Axel will have a fit if we're late for the group photo. Outside, their bikes waited side by side in the driveway. Duke's custom Harley and her rebuilt Sportster, both gleaming in the morning sun. 6 months of work had transformed the once junker into a machine that turned heads, that reflected its owner in every custom detail. As they rode toward the town center, Valentina felt the now familiar exhilaration that came with controlling her own machine. No longer a passenger, she moved with confidence through the streets she'd once been so desperate to escape. Main Street was barely recognizable, transformed into a sea of chrome and leather. Members of the Riot Kings greeted Duke with respect, Valentina with growing acceptance. No longer just Duke Reynolds' girl, she'd earned her own place among them. Not as a member, but as someone who understood their world, who respected their code. There's the power couple, Axel called as they dismounted near the staging area. Cutting it close, boss. Blame me, Valentina said with a smile. Had trouble deciding what to wear. Axel's eyes took in her jacket, recognition lighting his features. Holy shit. Is that the jacket? The one from high school? The very same. She did a mock twirl. Still fits. Still ugly as sin. Axel laughed. Ducking the playful swipe, she aimed at his head. But it suits you, Valentine. Always did. The easy camaraderie warmed her. These men, rough around the edges, loyal to a fault, had become surrogate family over the months. They'd watched her rebuild her bike and herself, offering help when needed, but mostly giving her space to find her own way. The day passed in a blur of activity. The group photo, the charity ride for the local children's hospital, the bike show where her Sportster took second place in the custom category. Valentina moved through it all with a confidence that felt earned, not borrowed. As sunset approached, Duke found her chatting with Sandy and Patty near the judging stand. Want to get out of here for a bit? He asked, voice pitched for her ears alone. There's somewhere I want to take you. Curiosity piqued, Valentina excused herself from her friends. Where to? It's a surprise. Duke's smile held secrets. Just follow me. They slipped away from the festivities, mounting their bikes and heading out of town. Duke led the way, but not from in front. Rather, slightly to the side, Valentina matching his pace as they took the familiar road toward the town limits. The sunset painted the sky in spectacular colors as they crested the hill overlooking Riverdale. Duke slowed, then pulled off onto a scenic overlook she remembered from their youth. The place where teenagers came to park, to dream, to plot their escapes. The place where, at 17, she'd first told Duke she loved him. They cut their engines in silent agreement, the sudden absence of noise almost startling. Below them, Riverdale spread out like a miniature model, the town center glowing with the rally's lights, familiar streets branching outward, the river cutting a silver path along the eastern edge. "It looks so small from up here," Valentina said, removing her helmet. "I used to think it was suffocating me. And now—" Duke stood beside his bike, watching her. "Now it feels like home." The admission came easily, truth settling into place. "Not because I'm trapped here, but because I choose it." Duke nodded, understanding in his eyes. He reached into his pocket, producing a small velvet box that made Valentina's heart stutter. "Duke, just hear me out." He took a deep breath, uncharacteristic nervousness crossing his features. "I'm not asking you to marry me. Not yet. That's not what this is." Confusion replaced her momentary panic. "Then what is it?" Duke opened the box, revealing not a ring but a pendant, a small silver key on a delicate chain. "It's a promise," he said, lifting it from the box. "Not to possess you or control you. Not to cage you. But to always give you the key to your own freedom." Tears pricked at Valentina's eyes as she understood the symbolism. "Duke, I love you, Valentine Ross." He held the necklace between them, the key catching the fading light. "I loved the wild girl who left, the broken woman who came back, and everything you've become since. I want to build a life with you, not as your protector or your savior, but as your partner. Your equal." The words, so simple and so profound, broke open something in Valentina's chest. This was what she'd been searching for all her life. Not escape, not perfection, but this. Acceptance without conditions. Love without cages. "Yes," she whispered, turning so he could place the necklace around her throat. The key settled just above her heart, its weight both substantial and light. To all of it, to building something together. Duke's fingers lingered at the nape of her neck, his touch sending familiar sparks down her spine. "When you're ready, if you're ever ready, there will be a ring to go with it. But only when you want it, only because you choose it." Valentina turned back to face him, reaching up to trace the planes of his face, the man who had given her space to find herself, who had loved her through all her iterations and transformations. "I used to be so afraid of being trapped," she said softly. "In this town, in a relationship, in a role someone else defined for me. I didn't understand that real freedom comes from choice, not escape." Duke's arms encircled her waist, drawing her closer. "And what do you choose now?" "You." Valentina rose on tiptoes, pressing her forehead to his. "Us. This life we're building. Not because I have to, not because I'm afraid to be alone, but because it's what I want. What makes me feel most myself." The kiss they shared tasted of promises, of futures, of choices freely made. When they broke apart, Valentina glanced down at the town below, seeing it with new eyes. "I'm home now," she said, the words feeling right in her mouth. "And I'm not going anywhere." The double meaning wasn't lost on Duke. His smile, slow and sure, told her he understood. She wasn't leaving Riverdale, but more importantly, she wasn't running from herself anymore. No more escaping, no more hiding behind roles or personas or what others expected of her. Just Valentine Ross, in all her messy, authentic glory. As twilight deepened toward night, they mounted their bikes again, engines roaring to life in perfect harmony. Side by side they rode down the hill toward the waiting town, headlights cutting twin paths through the gathering darkness. The road stretched before them, full of possibilities, some smooth, some rough, all theirs to navigate together. Not as leader and follower, but as partners who had earned each other through time and pain and forgiveness. The wind against her face felt like freedom. The man beside her felt like home. And for the first time in her life, Valentina knew with bone-deep certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. "Race you back to town," she called over the engine's rumble, the challenge sparking in her eyes. Duke's answering grin was all the response she needed. They accelerated in unison, bikes surging forward into the night, two paths converging into one shared journey. Behind them, the sunset painted the sky in streaks of fire and freedom, a perfect backdrop for two souls who had finally found their way home. Burnout hearts no more.
The end.